Chapter 56. Plane transition was a phenomenon unique to small and medium-sized planes. When a plane's source changed, it was easy for the plane to jump levels, and its nature would change. This process was known as transition. During transition, the entire plane would be in a special high-speed state, and the flow of time would be much faster than the outside world. This was the reason why 20 years could pass in the blink of an eye. The tragedy of Ming Lu was that once their reincarnators left, they would lose the coordinates of this plane and would never be able to enter again. The people inside could not receive any news, and could only watch as their companions left, but no one else entered. There was no time limit for reincarnation, but there was a limit to the soul itself. No one's soul could last 20 years of reincarnation. In other words, we are the only two reincarnators left here. Ji Nan understood the meaning of transition, and he also understood why Ming Lu had suffered such a tragedy. The result was really a pleasant surprise. Not necessarily. Land Marigold dampened his enthusiasm. This is equivalent to a new plane, and there are many missions here. It's normal to bump into other reincarnators. Ji Nan nodded lightly. No wonder they came here by accident. The probability was higher. 2 days later, Ji Nan's group arrived at the border between the north and the south, Azure Dragon City. A pugilistic force can actually build a city. As expected, the country is weak. Land Marigold looked at the majestic city in front of her, shook her head, and laughed. She was also a veteran reincarnator, and it was not like she had never seen a world with a feudal background. Zhong Yueying immediately glared and said, when the old hall master was around, Blue Dragon Hall was a first-rate force in the world. The Chen Emperor even wanted to confer her the title of prince, but the old hall master rejected it. An organization built entirely on one person's prestige is destined to not last long. This result is proof. Land Marigold said calmly. Enough. Ji Nan waved his hand. There's nothing to argue about. Bring us to Blue Dragon Hall. Zhong Yueying glared at Land Marigold, and could only lead the way. As for Land Marigold, after she turned her head, the disdain in her eyes suddenly disappeared. Instead, she revealed a look of deep thought. She whispered to Ji Nan, "There's something wrong with that woman." Ji Nan smiled but didn't say anything. He only needed someone to lead the way. He didn't care about anything else. Azure Dragon City, Blue Dragon Hall headquarters. A dignified man dressed in a purple-gold robe was sitting on the main seat, looking around calmly. Xuehauren, you traitor. Xuehauren, you colluded with the Jin nation and sold your country for your own glory. You are pushing the Blue Dragon Hall to eternal damnation. Xuehauren, the accusations echoed in the meeting hall, but Xuehauren didn't say a word and responded to everyone with silence. Only when everyone was tired of cursing and stopped did he slowly open his mouth. I didn't call you here to discuss what to do next. Xuehauren glanced at them calmly and said, I'm here to inform you that the Jin army will enter the city this afternoon. What did you say? Xuehauren, are you crazy? Everyone was in an uproar. Xuehauren finally forced a smile on his face, but his eyes were full of coldness. If you have the time to curse me, you might as well think about how to survive. His words caused the scene to quiet down. The Jin army was about to enter the city. They might be surrounded by the army now, and it would be too late to retreat. Moreover, everyone's family was in the Azure Dragon City. How many of them would be willing to abandon everything and leave? For the sake of the country, of course, everyone would say it when they were safe. But once their lives were at stake, how could they expect everyone to be a saint? Xuehauren understood this, and so did the other 3 vice hall masters, so they started to hesitate. Xuehauren smiled even more. He didn't give them any time to react and struck while the iron was hot. He said, Han Yu-chan, you said I sold my country for my own glory. Which country are you selling? Han Yu-chan, the only female among the vice hall masters, said coldly, of course it's the South Chen. The South Chen. Xuehauren sneered. Han Yu-chan, look back. How many people here are from the south, and how many are from the north? This question was powerful and resonant. Not only did Han Yu-chan's expression change, even the other 2 vice hall masters' expressions changed. Everyone present became even quieter. The rise of the Blue Dragon Hall was in the north. Those who could stand in this hall were all senior members of the hall. Naturally, most of them were from the north. Strictly speaking, they all belonged to the current Jin state. However, the old hall master supported the Chen state and rebelled against the Jin state, so no one thought about this. Now, Xue Haoren brought it up. In this way, many people didn't even have the moral problem of switching sides. More importantly, once this was said, the Blue Dragon Hall would no longer be united as before. The three vice hall masters felt a chill in their hearts. They all felt a deep sense of helplessness. Xue Haoren looked at the changing expressions on everyone's faces. He knew that his plan had succeeded, and he was just waiting for him to raise his arm. As long as the hall master doesn't return, the Jin army won't be able to enter the Azure Dragon City safely. A gentle but dignified voice came from outside the door. A beautiful figure slowly walked into the hall. Miss Lin. Miss Lin. As soon as that person appeared, someone hurried to welcome her. Obviously, she had a very high status in the Blue Dragon Hall. Han Yuchan was one of them. She looked at Lin Jun with joy. Miss Lin, you came at the right time. Let's work together to restrain Xue Haoren first. Then, we can discuss how to resist the Jin army. Xue Haoren was the most powerful among the four vice hall masters. Even if the three of them worked together, they could only defeat him at most. It would be very difficult to make him stay. If Miss Lin made a move, it would be completely different. Those who followed the old hall master to conquer the world knew that Miss Lin's strength was unfathomable. Even the old hall master said that he might not be able to deal with Miss Lin. If there were other hidden transcendent martial masters in the world other than those three, Miss Lin could very well be one of them. Xue Haoren watched Lin Jun walk closer step by step. He didn't look too panicked. Miss Lin, you should know who can save the Blue Dragon Hall. Lin Jun was as calm and indifferent as before. I only know who brought a great enemy to the Azure Dragon City. Seeing this, Xue Haoren couldn't help but sigh. He was about to continue speaking when he heard a voice. Since Miss Lin insists on being the enemy of the state of Jin, why do you still try to persuade her, Vice Hall Master Xue? The three Vice Hall Masters' expressions changed when they heard the voice. Even Lin Jun's brows furrowed. There were so many people present, but none of them noticed the person's arrival. They couldn't even tell where he was even after he spoke. A transcendent Grandmaster was here. Could it be the state preceptor of the state of Jin, Qi Lungshuan? This name popped up in Han Youchan's mind immediately. The other two Vice Hall Masters did the same. Everyone's hearts turned cold. Then, they saw Xue Haoren smiling faintly and stepping aside. A figure was standing there quietly. It's a woman, not Qi Lungshuan. The three heaved a sigh of relief before they quickly reacted. That's not right. Even if it's not Qi Lungshuan, it must be a transcendent grandmaster with divine martial arts. The woman's gaze swept across everyone and finally landed on Lin Jun Fairy Lin of the fairy sect. Lin Jun raised her head in surprise. There weren't many people in the world who could recognize her background. Which family did this woman belong to? As if reading Lin Jun's mind, the woman sneered. Fairy Lin doesn't know me. Even Yang Xiaoxiao probably doesn't remember a nobody like me. Chapter 57. Inside the Blue Dragon Hall, someone finally recognized Zhong Yao after she declared her vengeance. You're the holy maiden of Yinhua Tree Gate. Someone exclaimed. Han Youchan's mind shook, and the scene from back then seemed to appear before her eyes again. She had been one of the members in the expedition against Yinhua Tree Gate. That pair of holy sons and holy maidens were just two children back then. Who would have thought that they were already extraordinary masters now? At this moment, she felt that a great disaster was about to befall her. If Xue Haoren was only an internal threat, this Zhong Yao was a true external enemy, the kind that would not rest until one side was dead. There was no room for negotiation for the blood feud of extermination. Unless the old hall master returned, there would be no peace today. Seeing that no one dared to speak, Xue Haoren took 2 steps forward and said with a smile, Miss Zhong is Imperial Preceptor Qi's brilliant disciple. Today, we will only kill the ringleader. Those who did not participate in the Yinhua Tree Gate incident back then, please think carefully. An extraordinary grandmaster was actually only a disciple. Was Qi Longxuan this powerful? The crowd's hearts darkened, and some people began to move. Even the other two Vice Hall masters could not help but have some thoughts. They had not participated in the incident back then. Lin Jun knew that the people's hearts were scattered, and could only sigh softly. I'll stop them. If any of you want to leave, take this opportunity to leave. As she spoke, she formed a mysterious hand seal, and a glowing white light enveloped the entire hall. The crowd felt an indescribable pressure in their hearts, and no one could have the thought of killing anymore. Only Zhong Yarrow laughed softly, as expected of the secret technique of the 5 sects. Fortunately, Master was prepared. She took out a black pearl from her bosom and tossed it out lightly. The pillar floated in the air just like that, emitting wisps of black gas. The moment Lin Jun's white light came into contact with the black gas, it was immediately pushed back as if it had met its nemesis. This is the 5 Directions Devil Pearl. Lin Jun was, after all, knowledgeable and experienced. He recognized the origin of the pearl at a glance. No wonder Qi Longxuan was able to become a demonic transcendent in this end of days. It's because he obtained the 5 directional demon pearls. Lin Jun's expression darkened. The 5 directional demon pearls had appeared, but Yang Xiaoxiao was not around. The demonic aura of the 5 directions devil pearls and her cultivation technique could be considered to be mutually reinforcing and restraining each other. It was impossible to say which one was superior to the other. However, this demonic qi was Qi Longxuan's, and because of her cultivation technique, she had remained at the peak of the innate realm. Naturally, she was not a match for a grandmaster. The demonic energy forced the white light back bit by bit. Seeing that victory was about to come, a smile hung on Zhong Yarrow's face. However, at this moment, the demonic energy suddenly stopped and surged toward the door. This is. Zhong Yarrow was stunned, and her gaze involuntarily followed the direction of the demonic energy. She saw a young man walking over slowly, holding a black disc in his hand. The demonic aura was being drawn by the black disc. Zhong Yarrow suddenly remembered that Shizuan often lamented that the demonic path didn't last long. She only had the demonic bead in her hand and didn't have the corresponding demonic plate. Otherwise, her demonic arts would have long been accomplished. Could this be the 9 mysterious demonic plate that had been lost? Scenes of the past surfaced in her mind. At that time, she and her brother had been chased by the people of the Blue Dragon Hall, and they had been saved by a grandmaster. That grandmaster had come for the 9 mysterious demonic plate. After that, she joined the Limitless Demon Sect. Soon, the demon sect was destroyed, and she became a street rat. It was only when the North Jin Kingdom rose that she became a disciple of Qi Longxuan. After that, she had investigated what had happened. In the end, the demonic plate didn't seem to have been taken away by the grandmaster. Instead, it had fallen into the hands of the person behind the Blue Dragon Hall. Wait, could it be? Zhong Yarrow's heart trembled, and a terrifying possibility suddenly appeared in her mind. Before she could say anything, the 5 directions devil pearls shook slightly, and the demonic energy quickly gathered, forming a human figure. This person was dressed in a long grey robe. He looked middle-aged and had a refined temperament. At first glance, he looked like a middle-aged scholar. However, no one who knew him would dare to judge a book by its cover. This was because he was the state preceptor of the state of Jin, an unparalleled powerhouse with divine martial arts, Qi Longxuan. Ha 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 ha. I didn't expect the legend to be true. The 9 mysterious demonic plate is in the Blue Dragon Hall. As soon as Qi Longxuan appeared, he discovered the demonic plate and immediately laughed. The hearts of the people in the Blue Dragon Hall sank. If Zhong Yarrow and Miss Lin could deal with it, then even Qi Longxuan had appeared. How could they survive? They didn't notice that Lin Jun had been staring at the young man since the beginning. His expression was as if he had seen a ghost. So this demonic plate is a set. No wonder I couldn't open it back then. Ji Nan played with the demonic plate in his hand, his eyes filled with curiosity. In fact, when he snatched the 9 mysterious demonic plate, he wanted to release the 3 demon spirits and kill them to see if they would give him sin points. However, he tragically discovered that he didn't have a supply of demonic energy, so he couldn't even open the demonic plate. He couldn't follow Jing Nan's example and purify the demonic plate directly, so he could only put it aside. He didn't expect it to come in handy now. No, it was actually useless. The mission in the immortal demon world was over, and killing the demon spirits wouldn't give him sin points. At most, it could satisfy Ji Yunan's collecting hobby as a player. Qi Longxuan looked over with a smile and began to activate the 5 directions demon beads. He leisurely said, "Collect." However, the expected scene didn't appear. The demonic plate in Ji Yunan's hand didn't move at all. In the midst of the calm, Qi Longxuan felt a few strange gazes. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly. He formed a seal with his hands and pushed forward. Go. The demonic energy suddenly took form, and his clone condensed into a huge phantom lion that pounced straight at Ji Yunan. "Miss Lin." A deputy hall master looked at Lin Jun anxiously. This young man was killed, so be it. He clearly had a demonic treasure in his hand. If it fell into Qi Longxuan's hands, there's no hurry. Lin Jun shook her head firmly, her gaze still on that person. Although their appearances were different, their auras and temperaments were too similar. Furthermore, they had the demonic plate. Qi Longxuan transformed into a demonic lion and pounced over. He was already thinking about whether he should destroy Blue Dragon Hall or go into seclusion after obtaining the demonic plate. However, Zhong Yaro's shout pulled his thoughts back to reality. "Master, be careful. He's the person behind Blue Dragon Hall back then." Behind Blue Dragon Hall? Qi Longxuan was slightly taken aback. He was also someone who had experienced the great battle between good and evil back then. His distant memories gradually surfaced. Back then, Blue Dragon Hall was born as an assassin organization, but its true reputation rose because the person behind it fought with the previous Demon Lord. In the end, the Demon Lord fled in defeat. Qi Longxuan's heart seemed to be gripped by some kind of fear. A chill rose from his spine and rushed all the way to his head. However, it was too late for the demonic lion that he had transformed into to stop. He only saw the young man leisurely raise his hand, and the overwhelming darkness completely pressed down on him. Qi Longxuan felt that he couldn't move at all. Moreover, the demonic energy was rapidly dissipating. He used the last of his strength to shout out a sentence before his consciousness completely dissipated. Chapter 58. In the game, there was a very obvious difference in the level of the core skills at level 3 every time they leveled up. A level 1 core skill was just an ultimate skill that was gone after it was thrown out. From level 2 onwards, the player would be given more space for micromanipulation, and the upper limit would be much higher. For example, if Ji Yunan only had a level 1 skill, he could only use the power of shadows to directly cover the opponent, but at level 2, he could do incredible things like splitting the water flow. Therefore, it was reasonable to describe this stage as minute subtlety in this world. Ji Yunan dived all the way. The bottom of the pool wasn't very wide, and he could even see the edge at a glance. In the deepest part, there was a faint light. Ji Yunan followed the light and found that there was a whole other world at the bottom of the pool. From afar, there was a strange altar hidden at the bottom of the pool, and there were some strange patterns on the top of the altar. At this time, there was a black-robed figure standing on the altar. "Teacher!" A cry of surprise came from the altar. The person trapped here was indeed Yang Xiaoxiao. Although Ji Yunan had changed his body, the power around him hadn't dissipated. As the person who had the most contact with Ji Yunan back then, it was impossible for Yang Xiaoxiao not to recognize him. She quickly took off the mask on her face, ran to the bottom of the altar, and said, "Teacher, don't come in. This altar's barrier is extremely strong. Once you come in." Huh. She saw Ji Yunan standing in front of the barrier, the dragon heart pendant on his chest glowing faintly. With a punch with the power of a dragon, the barrier shattered with a loud bang. Yang Xiaoxiao didn't expect that the barrier that had trapped her for almost 2 months would be like this. Sure enough, she still couldn't catch up to her teacher's footsteps. Ji Yunan didn't think too much about it. Just like back then, he reached out and rubbed Yang Xiaoxiao's hair with a smile on his face. 20 years had passed, but her appearance hadn't changed much. She had only changed from a young girl to a woman in the workplace. She seemed to have grown slightly, and her temperament was more mature. After all, for extraordinaires, their lifespan was easily hundreds of years, and a mere 20 years was indeed nothing. After the joy of meeting Ji Yunan had vanished, Yang Xiaoxiao recalled this matter, and she lowered her head as she said, "Teacher has returned this time. Has he changed his body?" "Oh, you actually guessed it." Yang Xiaoxiao nodded lightly. After all, she was someone who had experienced the reincarnation war, and Ji Yunan did not hide anything from her. It was not surprising that she could guess the origins of the immortal's endowed being. "We did come from another world," Ji Yunan said. "We came here to complete some missions, and we would use different bodies every time." Hearing this, Yang Xiaoxiao's eyes lit up. "Then can I go to teacher's world as well?" Ji Yunan was stunned. Indeed, he had never thought of taking Yang Xiaoxiao away. On one hand, he had no need for it. On the other hand, he did not know how to take her away. The immortal demon world wasn't like the Langya world. It was a world that hadn't been colonized and developed, so it was impossible for a place like the Ascension Center to exist. Now, he could think about it. Yang Xiaoxiao had already become an extraordinaire, and he needed help with the martial arts tournament. But how could he get there? As if reading Ji Yunan's mind, Yang Xiaoxiao pointed at the altar and said, "Teacher, look here." A moment later, Ji Yunan returned to the pool and brought Land Marigold down. This is a dimensional teleportation array?" Land Marigold was dumbfounded. She stood in front of the altar and looked at the inscriptions on it. She was shocked, speechless. "If she didn't translate it wrong, it should be," Ji Yunan said, pointing at Yang Xiaoxiao. Yang Xiaoxiao hadn't been idle during the 2 months she was trapped here. She had been studying the altar while wearing down the power of the barrier. The altar seemed to have existed for a long time. The inscriptions were an unknown language. Fortunately, the owner of the altar had left a translation method. It was a comparison between the inscriptions and the ancient language of this world. Yang Xiaoxiao had studied it for 2 months and finally managed to decipher a part of it. The most important part was the name and purpose of the altar. Lu Zhanyu frowned and said in a low voice, "Interplanar teleportation array. This is a technique that only existed in the ancient times, before reincarnation existed. There were ancient ruins in this world." It shocked her so much that she couldn't care less about Yang Xiaoxiao's presence. She even said the word reincarnation. At that time, people had just discovered the existence of planes. They used the teleportation array to travel between planes to obtain resources and sell them. Later, there were more and more ways to trade between planes. One could even directly reincarnate. This kind of teleportation array was gradually eliminated. Land Marigold said with some emotion. It was as if she had witnessed the changes in history. Ji Yunan didn't care about history. He only cared about whether this thing could be used. "Can it still be activated?" "Yes, it can. I just don't know how to." Land Marigold shrugged helplessly. Who else studies this besides the people from the Ascension Centers? Ji Yunan was also scratching his head. Yang Xiaoxiao couldn't help but interrupt. "There's also a way to activate the altar here. We just need some materials." "No." Land Marigold interrupted her without hesitation. "I don't know what era this altar is from. The success rate of teleportation is probably less than 50%. Facing her teacher's companion, a senior from a high-level world, Yang Xiaoxiao didn't dare to refute. She could only shut up. "Can we increase the success rate if we get someone from the astral world here?" Ji Yunan asked with a frown. "If there's a professional, then it definitely won't be a problem." Land Marigold gave an affirmative answer. "But, are you willing to expose this place? This is a plane that has yet to be developed. Just get someone from care for one's family." Ji Yunan looked indifferent. "You believe in care for one's family so much? They can't just leave the resources here." Land Marigold was a little confused. According to her understanding of Ji Yunan, he wasn't such an unsophisticated person. "Who said we can let someone from care for one's family come in?" Ji Yunan glanced at her. "I said we can get someone who knows how to set it up. After that, we'll let care for one's family kill them." Land Marigold, The process of rescuing Yang Xiaoxiao wasn't anything special. Instead, the plane teleportation array gave Ji Yunan a surprise. When they returned to the pool, there was a big surprise. As soon as the three of them appeared, a long sword stabbed toward Yang Xiaoxiao's chest. Die. The sword came so suddenly that even Yang Xiaoxiao couldn't react. After all, she had been trapped for 2 months. Her strength was in an extremely weak state. Moreover, she was by Ji Yunan's side. It was inevitable for her to relax. More importantly, the sword came from someone she didn't expect. Chapter 59. Zhong Yuing's attack was too fast and inexplicable. Yang Xiaoxiao didn't even know she was there. She was so exhausted that she couldn't react at all. Lin Jun and Qi Longxuan stood at the side, but they couldn't stop her in time either. They could only watch the sword stab out. Ji Yunan stood behind Yang Xiaoxiao, expressionless. No one knew what he was thinking. Clang. The sound of metal clashing was heard. Zhong Yuing's sword was knocked away. She looked at the person next to her in a daze, the person she was least wary of. It was Land Marigold. She couldn't have reacted spontaneously. Unless. Zhong Yuing stared at the woman with a peaceful smile in front of her. Unless she was on guard against me from the very beginning. Everything that had happened along the way flashed across her mind, but she couldn't remember what flaws she had exposed. It could also be said that Ji Yunan gave her so much pressure that she completely ignored Land Marigold. When did you notice? Ever since you purposely showed your approval of the Green Dragon Hall and not your intention to rebel, Lu Zhanyu said with a smile. That's not what you said when you were being hunted. Zhong Yuing was stunned. She finally remembered that on the battlefield, she was sworn to be enemies with Blue Dragon Hall. When she found out that Ji Yunan and Qi Longxuan were old friends with Blue Dragon Hall, she deliberately adjusted her own inclination. She made it seem that her rebellion was just because she didn't like the actions of the higher-ups, but because she respected the old hall master. She didn't expect that the subtle contradiction between the two would become a failure. But it was too far-fetched to suspect her just because of this. It's enough to have a little suspicion. Land Marigold sheathed her sword unhurriedly. At the same time, she glanced at Ji Yunan, who was still expressionless. She believed that Ji Yunan had also noticed this. After all, she was the one who suffered from him first. Yang Xiaoxiao also recognized Zhong Yuing. She did not know what happened after she was trapped. She frowned slightly and said, Zhong Yuing, why do you want to kill me? Zhong Yuing knew that she had no chance, so she stopped pretending. She sneered and was about to speak, but Ji Yunan suddenly spoke. Let someone else answer this question. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure had already abruptly vanished, and then immediately reappeared. He was actually carrying a figure in his hand, and it was precisely Zhong Yarrow who had appeared before. As time passed, Ji Yunan's control over the power of shadow grew increasingly proficient. A junior like Zhong Yarrow, who had just become a transcendent, was completely helpless before him. When Qi Longxuan saw Zhong Yarrow, his expression immediately changed. Traitorous disciple. You. Ji Yunan waved his hand, signaling him to shut up. He pointed to Zhong Yuing and said, You've been waiting for this day for a long time since you arranged for her to stay in Blue Dragon Hall, right? Your sister. Or your daughter. Zhong Yarrow gritted her teeth so hard that they almost shattered. 20 years of planning was just about to succeed, but because of the return of the person in front of her, everything became a bubble. Do you want to know? She revealed a cold smile, and there was no sign of retreat between her brows. Even if I die, I will bring this secret to the underworld. Don't even think about knowing it for the rest of your lives. Crack. Ji Yunan casually twisted her throat, a baffled expression on his face. If you don't want to say it, then don't say it. You make it sound like I have to know. Mother. Zhong Yuing's sorrowful cry exposed their relationship. Are they really mother and daughter? Looking at their age, they should have been born at 13 or 14 years old. Ji Yunan rubbed his chin, completely ignoring Zhong Yuing's hateful gaze. In the next moment, the shadows began to entangle her body, like pitch-black tentacles, pouring into her eyes, ears, mouth, and nose, completely sealing off her 5 senses. What are you doing? Land Marigold looked at him in confusion, and so did Yang Xiaoxiao. I need her to live for a while. Ji Yunan restrained Zhong Yueying with ease and chuckled. If she realizes and commits suicide, it will be troublesome. But, why are your movements so familiar? After taking care of Zhong Yaro, Ji Yunan could only wait for this mission. With his transcendent strength, this kind of mission was a waste. Fortunately, he did not care about the mission reward, only the size of the mission plane. Ji Yunan sat alone on a hill, quietly looking at the night sky in the extreme north. A light breeze blew, and a figure was already standing behind him. Teacher, your power is actually wind. Ji Yunan turned around and looked Yang Xiaoxiao up and down, then shook his head. No, it's more like a more detailed rule. Being able to elevate a skill to the level of rule at grade 3 was a characteristic of extraordinary talent, and also a privilege of NPCs. Just like Ji Yunyan's mapping, if players had this rule, at grade 3 they would at most have space folding, precise positioning, and so on. At this time, Yang Xiaoxiao was the same. She had already found her own path from the pure wind. In comparison, the players were much more miserable. Even a contestant like Ji Yunan, who had participated in the second round, could only take it one step at a time. Of course, Ji Yunan's understanding of the various rules and skills was not something they could compare to. As expected, I can't hide it from teacher. Yang Xiaoxiao pursed her lips and smiled, then turned around and said, So, teacher, did you hire people to kill my family back then? This change of topic was too sudden, but Ji Yunan did not stop. As if he was asked a question like have you eaten tonight, he opened his mouth and answered. Yes, I hired Mo Jiachi. Ji Yunan nodded. At that time, I did not expect that 20 years would pass in the blink of an eye. Is it because of the Ming Lu's files? Yang Xiaoxiao's expression was solemn as she nodded slowly. It was precisely because of the appearance of the plane jump that the reincarnators left one by one. When Yang Xiaoxiao and the others began to take control of the world, the old matters gradually surfaced. However, now that things had come to this, Ji Yunan really did not care about this matter anymore. Selling an NPC was really not a big deal to him. If Yang Xiaoxiao had second thoughts, then he could just kill her. What was the big deal? Since she had brought it up herself, it was obvious that she had other intentions. Hearing Ji Yunan admit it himself, Yang Xiaoxiao only lowered her head, her body in a state of tension. After a long time, she finally let out a light breath, her face showing a look of relief. Do you want revenge? Ji Yunan had a playful smile on his face. Yang Xiaoxiao shook her head lightly. I am not a match for teacher, nor am I a good person. I do not have the ability to take revenge, nor do I have the motivation to do so. The smile on Ji Yunan's face gradually disappeared. It seems that these 20 years of training have made you smarter. So, what exactly do you want? Chapter 60. When Lin Yunyun arrived at the care for one's family, it was already late at night. The darkness of the night shrouded the earth. This young girl, who was only 13 years old, walked step by step into the deep courtyard. Her shadow stretched slowly in the moonlight, looking a bit desolate, but not actually. She came here not because of love, but because of desire. A tiger that had tasted blood would never go back to being a vegetarian again. Ms. Lin. Seeing a strange girl standing in front of her and speaking in a gentle voice, she was at a loss of what to do. Wasn't it the housekeeper who contacted me? How come? She didn't want others to see her when she was taking the medicine, at least the less, the better. Lin Jun smiled and reassured Lin Yunyun with her unique charm. A moment later, she led the girl into a room and said with a smile, the things you want are all in there. Lin Yunyun took a deep breath and didn't know what to say, but the thrill that went deep into her bones began to reverberate in her body again. Young master, she went in. Lin Jun stood beside Ji Yunan and said softly. Ji Yunan nodded and stood up from the chair. In the evil god's temple in his mind, the martial arts competition had begun. On the third day after his return, Ji Yunan started the Red Carp martial arts competition, and the series of events began. What he needed to do now was to earn sin points for the first event. He stood up and walked out, but Lin Jun stood in front of him with a hesitant expression. Young master, will you kill Xiao Xiao in the future? She asked after a long period of mental consideration. Ji Nan looked at her with great interest. I thought people like you would care more about the suffering of all people than the life and death of a certain person. I'm not the fairy sect's heavenly lady anymore. Lin Jun shook her head lightly. You didn't have a choice in the past, but now you want to be a good person? Ji Nan teased casually, then smiled and said, does she think that I can't do anything to her if she stays there? When he said this, Ji Nan's smile was somewhat strange. I'm actually not that interested in you, but that's not necessarily the case for others. Care for one's family needs a manager there, and I'm in charge of the martial arts competition. Who do you think will go there? Ji Nan's room was not spacious. Compared to her status, an ordinary 1.5 meter bed was somewhat shabby. No matter what, she had to sleep on a 500 square meter crystal bed. But even such a simple layout was unimaginably luxurious to Lin Yun. She realized that this was not a room prepared for her, so she moved more carefully. Her eyes slowly scanned the room, and her clenched fists began to sweat. It was as if she could hear her own heartbeat. Finally, she found what she was looking for on the dressing table. It was a bag of white powder in a plastic bag. Lin Yun's eyes lit up, and she instantly let down her guard. Desire occupied her mind again, and she grabbed the plastic bag and opened her mouth to chew on it. She didn't know when it started, but she liked this rough way of eating more and more. Poo, poo, poo. However, as soon as it entered her mouth, Lin Yun couldn't help but spit it out. This was not what she wanted at all, but the flour. Damn it. Heh. Feeling that she had been fooled, Lin Yun was about to lose her temper when she found a small glass bottle hidden in the flour ball. Inside the bottle was a handful of bright red crystals, which shone faintly under the light. Lin Yun seemed to understand something. She quickly unscrewed the bottle cap and poured the crystal into her mouth. Unfortunately, the opening of the bottle was too narrow, and only a small amount was poured out. But as soon as this small amount entered Lin Yun's mouth, the girl felt like her head was about to explode. It was as if countless needles were about to pierce her cheeks and poke her into a hedgehog. The girl almost couldn't help but moan. More than 10 years of endless pain had made her develop a strange hobby. On one hand, she desperately wanted to live like a normal person and use stimulant drugs to eliminate the pain. On the other hand, she was obsessed with strong sensory stimulation, even the pain she was most familiar with and hated the most. Her eyes were closed, and the hand holding the bottle was trembling slightly. Her knuckles were faintly white because she used too much force. Bang! The glass bottle couldn't withstand her strength and suddenly burst open, which woke the girl from her extreme excitement. The red crystals flew everywhere, and most of them fell to the ground. The glass shards stung her hand with blood, but she didn't seem to feel it. The girl frantically picked up the crystals from the ground and sucked them. She even lay on the ground and licked them until there was nothing left on the ground. She began to use her tongue to lick her palm. The glass shards scratched the surface of her tongue, her mouth, and the corner of her mouth, but she didn't feel it. Her body was hot, and the aphrodisiac began to take effect. But compared to the crazy feeling that stimulated her brain, this desire was nothing. Soon, the crystals in her hand were not enough. The girl's mind was extremely clear, but it was filled with endless desire. She began to rummage around. From the dressing table to the bedside table, she violently searched, smashed, and destroyed the decorations, but the red crystals never appeared again. Until she lifted the quilt that was spread flat on the bed. She was shocked. Countless blood-red crystals, shining with a strange light, were quietly spread in front of her, shining brightly. You were looking for me. Ji Yunyan stood outside his room and looked at Ji Yunan in confusion. Ever since Ji Yunan brought the news of the immortal demon world, the focus of the entire care for one's family had changed. The martial arts tournament was almost completely handed over to Ji Yunan, and she had already taken over the matters of plane colonization. This was a plane that few reincarnators set foot on, rich in resources, and large in scale. No force could miss it. In the past few days, she had been very busy, but Ji Yunan was looking for her at this time. It was most likely something important. What could it be? Ji Yunan pointed to her room. Do you see it? Ji Yunan was slightly startled. Just as she was about to extend her consciousness to take a look, she suddenly felt a chill around her body. She didn't know when, but she was standing in darkness. Shadows surrounded her from all directions. Eternal Domain Realm, Ji Yunyan almost cried out in surprise. She frantically urged her own magical power, only to find that the surrounding laws had long been sealed by Ji Yunan. The few magical powers she was proficient in had all been dismantled. Ji Yunyan couldn't speak at this time. She could only stare at Ji Yunan. Her gaze was both surprised and complicated. She was surprised that Ji Yunan would attack her, and surprised at the speed of his growth. His breakthrough didn't seem to need any accumulation at all. In just a few months, he had reached this point. Furthermore, it was only a single exchange, but he actually saw through me completely. She didn't even have a chance to use her backup plans before they were completely sealed. This made her feel a sense of defeat. How could she know that Ji Yunan's understanding of the mapping laws was deeper than hers? As long as he could decipher a few basic laws, it would be enough to render most of her methods ineffective. Using one's own power to seal the laws was one of the characteristics of the Eternal Domain Realm. Ji Yunan's shadow power had reached the 3rd level, so she finally had this ability. Thus, she used it to deal with Ji Yunyan immediately. Do you really think that you can escape unscathed after scheming against me? Ji Yunan reached out and patted her face. He said with a smile, even if I don't mind, I still have to teach you a lesson. The next moment, countless shadows poured into her mouth and wandered around her body, dispersing all the internal energy in her body. A dignified transcendent expert had suddenly become an ordinary person. Moreover, because of the residual shadows in her body, she couldn't even move. Ji Yunan lifted Ji Yunyan's delicate body with one hand and threw her into the room. Chapter 61. A messy room, a half-naked girl, a demonic blood-red crystal and fresh blood intertwined, and the girl was lying in this blood, a blurry, ambiguous smile on her face. When Ji Yunyan was thrown into the room, this was the scene he saw. Ji Yunyan felt as if a bomb had gone off in his head. Shame, unbearable, anger, and countless other emotions surged in his heart. This was like a girl who pretended to be a good girl at home, but actually went out to bars all day, and one day found out that the person who asked her out was her own father. Even when her strength was surpassed by Ji Yunan, and she had no power to fight back, she had never felt this way. Strength could make up for it, but how did he know? She wanted to go out and question him, but when she turned around, she saw a piece of paper passed in through the crack of the door. On it was written the names of the girls she had met since she was young. Without exception, they were all young girls between the ages of 12 to 16. The more Ji Yunyan read, the colder his heart became. Another list flashed in his mind, that was the list Ji Yunan circled Shemiao's name during the battle with the Long family. Could it be that he had suspected it from that time? Young master, Miss Bai is here. Next to Ji Yunyan's room, Ji Yunan was fiddling with a white crystal when Lin Jun's voice sounded from outside the door. Come in. Ji Yunan's voice had a rare hint of expectation. Bai Luo walked in, puzzled, not knowing why Ji Yunan was looking for her so late at night. Lin Jun, who was following behind her, had a strange expression on her face. She could more or less guess what was going to happen next, so she didn't want to stay and watch. At this time, Ji Yunan had also finished debugging. The white crystal was a projector, and it projected an image onto the opposite wall. It was the image of Ji Yunyan's room. Lin Yunyun was lying on the bed covered with red crystals, her face full of intoxication. The image of her rubbing her body was very visually impactful. I'm going to get a pinhole. Bai Luo thought that it was a bad image, so she quickly covered her eyes and shouted. Ji Yunan laughed involuntarily and said, Don't be in such a hurry to cover your eyes. Look at who that is. When Bai Luo heard this, she peeked through her fingers suspiciously and saw a familiar figure. Eldest senior sister. Ji Yunyan had already walked to the front of the bed, quietly looking at the young girl in front of him. His face was no longer calm, only a kind of indescribable complexity. Since he had already been discovered by Ji Yunan, then why not? No, he definitely had other plans. For example, he must have been secretly recording it. No, as long as that information was exposed, the result would be the same. Ji Yunyan had never been so conflicted in his life. Even after discovering his strange hobby, he had never hesitated as much as he did today. No matter how unscrupulous it was fine to do it behind closed doors, but it was a different matter to be stared at by others. But this young girl was really charming. According to Ji Yunyan's experience of countless women, the young girl in front of her couldn't be more than 14 years old, and her addiction to drugs had brought her a strong stimulation. Ji Yunyan tentatively touched her cheek, but found that her face was shockingly hot. Is it pink? No wonder. Ji Yunyan touched some of the crystals and immediately understood what had happened. Damn Ji Yunyan, he actually did it on my bed. Oh. Perhaps it was her movement that awakened Lin Yunyun. The young girl suddenly got up, hugged Ji Yunyan, and began to frantically kiss the side of her face. There was still blood flowing from her mouth, dripping on the bed, on the surface of the red crystals, and also on Ji Yunyan's chest, dyeing her white shirt red. The faint smell of blood mixed in the air, and Ji Yunyan's breathing gradually became heavier. After She Miao's death, Bai Luoluo couldn't do it in time, and she hadn't had sex for a long time without reincarnation. Most of Lin Yunyun's clothes had already fallen off due to her tearing. At this moment, Ji Yunyanji gently pulled on it and it fell down, revealing its pink body. Ji Yunyan's hand pressed on the young girl's waist, and her whole body began to press down. In the next room, Bai Luoluo was already stunned. She knew little about the affairs between men and women, let alone women. Lin Jun knew a little, but as the fairy sect's heavenly lady, she had never experienced it herself. She blushed and wanted to escape, but she didn't know what to say. Only Ji Yunyan watched calmly from beginning to end, and his face carried a smile that was overflowing with interest. There wasn't the slightest trace of lust on his face, and he seemed as if he was admiring a piece of art. If justice and light perish one day, only lesbians and lollis will live forever. Ji Yunyan nodded and recited the famous proverb in the game. Of course, it was slightly modified by the players. Bai Luoluo pulled his sleeve. What are they doing? She felt that it was something bad, but her strong curiosity drove her to continue watching. She could only hope that Ji Yunyan would stop her verbally. Of course, she was thinking too much. Ji Yunyan said with a smile, of course they're doing something that everyone likes to do. Bai Luoluo tilted her head and wanted to ask more questions, but Lin Jun hurriedly stopped her. God knew what Ji Yunyan would say if she kept asking. On the screen, the two women's actions became more and more intense. As Ji Yunyan began to roll on the bed, the pink powder entered her body. The strong aphrodisiac began to take effect, and her consciousness gradually blurred. Do you know why your eldest senior sister took you to ascend? Ji Yunyan asked suddenly. Bai Luoluo was stunned and shook her head in confusion. Eldest senior sister treats me well, why was she nice to you? Ji Yunyan smiled and answered his own question. The answer is simple. Maybe one day in the near future, you'll also be the one in the screen. You mean? Bai Luoluo finally reacted, and her face began to turn pale. She remembered that when she first met eldest senior sister, she was only 14 years old. At that time, eldest senior sister took good care of her, and sometimes even slept with her. Oh, when the scenes of the past appeared in her mind, Bai Luoluo only felt goosebumps all over her body, and the screen also reached the most intense moment. There was no clothing on the bed, only two colors of red and white intertwined. Although the crystal could not transmit sound, because it was in the next room, there was still a faint moan. Thus, Bai Luoluo's cheeks began to redden, and even her body faintly felt hot. A hand was placed on her shoulder, and the little girl screamed in fear, only to find that it was Ji Yunyan's hand. Only then did she realize that Ji Yunyan seemed to have been watching quietly, and even his expression did not change. She looked at Ji Yunyan in confusion, and some bad thoughts came to her mind. Didn't they say that men would be very excited when they saw a beautiful girl's body? Was there something wrong with him? Bai Luoluo recalled Ji Yunyan's previous behavior, and no matter how she looked at it, it did not seem normal, and she could not help but nod in her heart. If Ji Yunyan knew what she was thinking, he would definitely throw her into the room without saying a word, but now he just smiled and said, "You can't tell your eldest senior sister about what happened today." Why? Bai Luoluo asked, although she also wanted to pretend that nothing happened. If she knows, what do you think she will do to you? Chapter 62. Lei Wuji's laughter was so unbridled that it attracted the attention of many people around him. As one of the outstanding contestants in the group the day after tomorrow, many people recognized Li Lan. They immediately understood what had happened when she was eliminated. I don't know what the people from the Star Cloud Dojo were thinking. They just eliminated Li Lan. Isn't that right? Now that she has become a disciple of a transcendent, she might have to thank them. Speaking of which, didn't Master Lei say that he wouldn't accept any more disciples? Maybe Li Lan is talented enough to make him fall in love with her. Noisy discussions could be heard from the surroundings. Although the resting area was already noisy, these voices were especially ear-piercing, constantly drilling into the ears of the people from the Star Cloud Dojo. Lu Danza finally could not stand it anymore. He stood up and pointed at Li Lan. Ji Yunan was the one who didn't want you back then. Go and pick on him if you can. Lu Danza, what nonsense are you talking about? Zhong Dao suddenly turned around. His face was terrifyingly gloomy. He was so furious that he almost slapped Lei Wuji's face. Lu Danza no longer had any scruples. He said to himself, am I wrong again? What does a young master like him know about the recruitment of a dojo? He only recruited Lin Yunyun to keep a mistress for himself. Lu Danza could be considered to have seized the opportunity to vent the resentment in his heart in one go. He was a pure martial artist. He did not know the inside story of the Long family's destruction, nor did he know much about Hu Wei's strength. He only knew that Ji Yunan was a complete layman. Oh, are you talking about me? A calm voice came from behind him as if it was asking him something trivial like, have you eaten? Zhong Dao was shocked. He quickly turned around and wanted to say something, but Lu Danza said, that's right. If you have the ability, then prove to me that you're right. He pointed at Lin Yunyun who was behind Ji Yunan and said, prove that she's talented and didn't pass because of your selfishness. Am I right? Yes. Lu Danza's last sentence was directed at the members of the Star Cloud Dojo, which immediately attracted a burst of cheers. After all, most of the martial artists who were willing to participate in the martial arts tournament hated under-the-table manipulation. He looked at Ji Yunan provocatively, wanting to see how this young master would deal with this situation. Even care for one's family would have to think twice if he exposed his absurd deeds to the public, right? At this time, Lei Wuji was also watching with great interest. He was very happy to see the internal fighting within the Star Cloud Dojo. However, to everyone's surprise, Ji Yunan did not speak at all. Instead, he directly kicked Lu Danza's knee. Kacha. The kick didn't seem fast or slow, but the force behind it was astonishing. Lu Danza's right kneecap was instantly shattered, and his entire leg was bent at a horrifying angle. Lu Danza cried out in pain, but before he could speak, Ji Yunan actually kicked him again. In the blink of an eye, his left leg was also broken, and he knelt on the ground. However, the way he knelt was terrifying. His two calves were in front of his body. Young Master Nan. Zhong Dao quickly stood in front of Lu Danza and pleaded, young Master Nan, Danza, openly despising the judges, you will be disqualified from the martial arts tournament for life. Ji Yunan's face was expressionless, and he spoke slowly as if the person who had just injured Lu Danza was not him at all. Zhong Dao was dumbfounded, and Lu Danza was even more shocked. He pointed at Ji Yunan angrily and roared, what right do you have to do this? What right do you have? However, Ji Yunan had no intention of continuing to speak. He turned around and walked away. He didn't need to explain anything to anyone. Lu Danza wanted him to prove it was even more laughable. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted the martial arts tournament to go according to plan, he could have just killed him. What was there to prove? Your Excellency, please wait. At this time, Lei Wuji finally spoke. Your Excellency, who are you to be able to disqualify a contestant? He looked at Ji Yunan's back, and the smile on his face showed that victory was in his grasp. In his eyes, this young man was too stupid. He had publicly angered the crowd in front of so many people. He had given himself the best weapon. Lei Wuji was usually domineering, but he was also a meticulous person. Otherwise, He wouldn't have been able to run such a large martial arts school. As expected, as soon as his words came out, it immediately resonated with countless people. Many people began to speak up, demanding an explanation from Ji Yunan. He could disqualify Lu Danza just like that, but who knew if they would be next? Not to mention the fact that Ji Yunan was acting so arrogantly. Ji Yunan finally frowned. He turned around and walked over. Lei Wuji's smile widened. He wasn't afraid that his opponent would do anything out of desperation. He had the absolute advantage in strength. Hey! Lei Wuji suddenly felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. A pitch-black dagger had sunk into his abdomen at some point. A strange and majestic energy constantly surged out, completely suppressing his extraordinary strength. What was going on? Was it because of this dagger? In the end, Lei Wuji was still a transcendent expert. In the face of death, he let out a furious roar and punched out. However, Ji Yunan's movements were even faster. He punched him in the face, and this extraordinary master was instantly sent flying, falling straight into the crowd. The shadow energy in his abdomen was still wildly destroying his vitality. Even if he could be saved, his strength would be greatly reduced. The entire resting area fell silent. A transcendent expert had been sent flying with a single punch. This was an unimaginable scene that left everyone speechless. Li Lan was even more dumbfounded. She had never imagined that her master, whom she viewed as the symbol of invincibility, would be sent flying like a sack. More importantly, the person who had attacked was this guy. Ji Yunan's actions had caused too much of a commotion. Lei Wuji's heavy injury had attracted everyone's attention. Several people immediately stood up. Ji Yunan, you've gone too far. The person who had stood up to rebuke him was an old man with white hair and a face full of wrinkles. He was the leader of the Martial Dojo Alliance and the highly respected dojo master Ju Xuewen. Aubergist Ju was so angry that his beard was trembling. Lei Wuji could be considered his junior, but now he had been seriously injured in front of everyone, and it was all because of a quarrel. The martial dojos were a special existence. They could not compare to the major forces, so they had to work together. He helped Lei Wuji up and was even more furious at Ji Yunan for hitting him so hard. How arrogant and despotic. Is this how Ji Yu Tianqi teaches his juniors? Ju Xuewen's seniority was extremely high. The Ji Yu Tianqi he mentioned was the second great-uncle of the care for one's family. Aubergist Ju's appearance could be said to be a shot in the arm for everyone. In the end, evil could not prevail over good in this world. Someone could stand up and uphold justice. At this moment, another voice came from the door. Aubergist Ju is right. Everyone looked over and saw a row of military officers in dark green uniforms standing in an orderly manner. The person who had spoken was the young man in the lead. Hu Daobin was standing next to him with a gloating smile on his face. He seemed to be waiting to see what would happen to Ji Yunan. Chapter 63. In the resting area, the young man in military uniform stood at the door with a cold smile. He concluded that no matter how powerful Ji Yunan was, he could only admit defeat this time. No one dared to fight the military head-on. Meanwhile, Ju Xuewen helped Lei Wuji up with a livid face, while Lu Danza was kneeling on the ground, unable to get up. He could only shout, "Mr. Ju, you must seek justice for me." Ju Xuewen nodded solemnly. "Don't worry. The martial arts tournament is a serious matter. How could he be allowed to do as he pleases?" Lu Danza's expression eased a little. Ji Yunan's merciless act of breaking his legs had made him completely hate Ji Yunan. "Now that you've offended Aubergist Ju, let's see how you're going to deal with this." Ji Yunan's calm gaze swept around, his face still expressionless. He had never taken these people seriously. It was like doing a mission. There would always be monsters jumping out to stop you in the process. There was nothing special about it. If there was a monster, you could just kill it. So he gently clenched his right hand, and the pitch-black shadow sword was already in his hand. Seeing that Ji Yunan was really planning to attack, the young man in military uniform's expression turned cold. He waved his right hand, and more than 10 machine guns were aimed at Ji Yunan. They were from the military and had nothing to do with the police. They were just looking for an excuse to cause trouble. Major General Huang, wait. Just as the two sides were about to fight, another voice rang out, and a group of people walked in from the door. This time, it was people from Care for One's Family. The leader was one of the elders from Care for One's Family. His name was Jiyu Tianling, and he was also Jiyu Nian's great-uncle. Second great-uncle Jiyu Tianqi, Jiyu Mingyuan, and the others were mainly focused on the plane colonization. The matters of the astral realm were left to Jiyu Tianling to handle. This old man was famous for his gentleness when he was young, and he was the best at handling relationships. Sure enough, as soon as he appeared, he flattered the young man in uniform. Then, he smiled apologetically and said, "Our Jiyu Nan is young and impetuous. Please don't lower yourself to his level, Major General Huang. Let this old man talk to him." Major General Huang curled his lips in disdain and waved his hand to signal his men to put away their guns. This was a sign of agreement. On the other side, Zhu Xuowen snorted and said, "There are still people here who want to control the martial arts tournament. How do you explain that?" Zhu Xuowen's status in the Jianghu was too high. Jiyu Tianling hurriedly swore, "Brother Zhu, don't worry. From today onwards, we won't let Jiyu Nan interfere in the matters of the martial arts tournament." Seeing his sincerity, Zhu Xuowen snorted and didn't say anything else, waiting to see how he would deal with it. Jiyu Tianling tried hard to appease both sides. Then, he looked at Jiyu Nan, only to see that he was still standing there motionless. Jiyu Tianling suddenly became angry. "Jiyu Nan, why are you still standing there?" Jiyu Tianling's face was gloomy as he scolded, "The martial arts tournament is a grand event for all the warriors on the planet. It's not up to you to decide. Go home and reflect on yourself." Jiyu Nan didn't reply. Even his eyes didn't waver. His gaze swept past Jiyu Tianling and saw Jiyu Xingzhu behind him. Only then did he show a faint smile. The people from Care for One's Family came so quickly. Someone must have tipped them off. It seemed that Jiyu Nian hadn't revealed his true strength to these people. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so stupid. As for those old guys from Care for One's Family, they obviously didn't understand what Jiyu Nan meant to them. They really thought that he was just a guest in their family. But it was meaningless. When had Jiyu Nan ever cared about their lives? "Since everyone is here, I'll inform you all together." Jiyu Nan pressed the shadow sword against the ground. He looked around and said, "I'll only say it once." His voice was calm and cold. "How, where, when, and how the martial arts tournament will be held will be decided by me. If anyone has any objections, they can go die." As soon as he finished speaking, the whole resting area fell into silence. Everyone was shocked by Jiyu Nan's arrogant words. Jiyu Tianling was the first to react. Blue veins popped up on his forehead as he roared, "Are you crazy? You!" Before he finished speaking, a gust of cold wind had already hit him. A sword light that was hard to see with the naked eye flashed by. He stopped moving as if a video was stuck. The scene was very funny. Granduncle Jiyu Xingzhu, who was behind him, looked up in confusion. Only then did she realize that there was already a thin line of blood on Jiyu Tianling's neck. The next moment, his head slid down diagonally. Jiyu Nan killed him with one strike. "Jiyu Nan, what are you doing?" Jiyu Xingzhu's hands were trembling. She would never have thought that Jiyu Nan would actually attack a member of Care for One's Family, and it was a fatal strike. Jiyu Nan didn't even look at her. His cold eyes moved to Major General Huang. Major General Huang suddenly felt cold. He had a bad feeling in his heart, but he still tried to calm himself down. He wouldn't dare to attack me. Otherwise, he would become the enemy of the entire interstellar government. That would be asking for death. Major General Huang gritted his teeth, still hesitating whether he should speak or not. On the other side, Old Master Zhu Xuowen had already flown into a rage. He quickly rushed to Jiyu Nan. "Killing in court. You're defying the law. Do you know what you're doing?" Zhu Xuowen stared at Jiyu Nan angrily. "Jiyu Tianling is saving Care for One's Family and also saving you. Turn yourself in to the military immediately. Otherwise, the century-old foundation of Care for One's Family will be destroyed in your hand." Zhu Shuowen saw that Ji Yunan didn't move, so he said coldly, "What? You still want to attack me?" Ji Yunan, who was originally expressionless, almost laughed out loud when he heard the last sentence. It was really funny to see a humanoid monster jumping up and down and saying such strange words in the end. However, the laughter didn't affect Ji Yunan's actions. The shadow sword in his hand slowly disappeared, but his palm was as fast as lightning. He directly slapped Zhu Shuowen's face. Pa! This slap landed squarely on Aubergist Zhu's face. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. His old face froze for a moment before it flushed red. He was surprised by Ji Yunan's quick action, but he also couldn't believe that Ji Yunan actually dared to attack him. Does this B***starred kid know who I am? For a martial artist of his age, one word from me is enough to make it difficult for him to establish a foothold in the entire red carp. Jiyu Xingzhu, who was next to him, was already speechless. Her mind was filled with the thought, "I'm finished." If she had known that Ji Yunan had such a temper, she definitely wouldn't have brought the people from Care for One's Family here. After today, either Care for One's Family and Ji Yunan would completely break off relations, or they would become enemies with the entire red carp. Aubergist Zhu was so angry that his hands were shaking. He pointed at Ji Yunan shakily. "You oh pa." Ji Yunan slapped him again. The old master still couldn't dodge it. This time, he also couldn't say anything. After living like a prince for so many years, he had already regarded martial arts as a way to strengthen his body. Instead, he had forgotten how to fight to the death. Ji Yunan wouldn't be courteous with him. A sinister smile appeared on his face. This old man's strength was actually quite good. He was much stronger than Jiyu Tianlong. At least, he was already in the refinement realm. It was just that he was old and weak. Chapter 64. Ji Yunan's wanton killing cast a shadow over the entire martial arts tournament. A large number of contestants even chose to withdraw from the tournament as a form of protest. Ji Yunan couldn't be bothered with these people. Withdrawing from the tournament was a good thing for him. The original 3-day tournament was forcefully shortened to 1 day by him. For Ji Yunan, he only needed the martial arts tournament to be held as usual. It didn't matter who won or lost, who became famous or who failed. According to Ji Yunan's experience, the focus of the sin value in the event was on Lin Yunyan, not the martial arts tournament itself. Most of the sin events and missions in the Evil God game weren't purely about doing evil. Otherwise, one could level up just by killing indiscriminately. How could it be so easy? It was either a clear target like by Luoluo's blackening, or it allowed the players to do whatever they wanted. But there must be a key point. To put it bluntly, the free event was just to hide the target. Players could only obtain sin value by scouting. For example, in this martial arts tournament incident, Ji Yunan believed that Lin Yunyan was the key. So he lured Lin Yunyan to take drugs and sent her to Ji Yunyan's bed. "The outside world is in a mess because of you, but you're leisurely drinking tea here by yourself." A voice sounded beside Ji Yunan. He didn't even raise his head and continued to sit by himself. The person who came was Land Marigold, who hadn't appeared for a long time after returning from the immortal and demon world. Ji Yunan yawned in boredom. "I've always been focused on what I want to do. Didn't you want to take full control of the martial arts tournament? When no one objected to it, why didn't you do anything?" Lu Zhanyu pulled out a chair and sat down as if he was very familiar with her. Ji Yunan was too lazy to say more. If you have something to say, then say it. If not, then scram. As if expecting Ji Yunan's vulgarity, Land Marigold spread her hands helplessly. "Ji Yunyan asked me to come. She told you to stay away from the limelight after this incident." Hearing this, Ji Yunan couldn't help but glance at her and curl his lips. The fact that Ji Yunyan asked her to come meant that he was aware of their relationship. But she probably couldn't guess how they met. Seeing that Ji Yunan didn't seem to care, Land Marigold couldn't help but frown. "You killed too much this time. Killing Huang Qi isn't a big deal. Anyway, you are at the Eternal Domain realm. It's more trouble for you to kill Zhu Shuowen." Land Marigold was also from an aristocratic family. The Luca clan was only a branch, and its main branch was in the distant 4th star domain. Thus, She was more familiar with the twists and turns of events. It was true that Huang Qi had an uncle who was a military commander, but he had many nephews. There was no need for him to cause trouble for an eternal domain powerhouse for a dead person. On the other hand, Zhu Xuewen had been running a martial arts dojo his whole life. Who knew how many students he had taught? Who knew if there were any monsters among them? To these people, there was only one teacher, and he had been beaten to death in his later years. This hatred had to be avenged. However, Ji Yunan still had an indifferent attitude and casually said, "Let's wait until the martial arts tournament is over. I will know where to go when the time comes." Since it was a chain of events, there would definitely be new events after the martial arts tournament was over. Lu Zhanyu furrowed his brows and heard the sound of footsteps coming from the door. He had no choice but to remain silent and disappear without a trace. "Young master, the results of the martial arts tournament are out," said Wang Dong respectfully, still dressed in a black suit. Ji Yunan took the final results from his hands and said with a faint smile, "Why are you still here? Care for one's family still dares to cooperate with me?" Wang Dong's expression didn't change. He only revealed a meaningful smile. The old masters might not dare, but the eldest miss does. Ji Yunan was stunned for a moment, and then he laughed loudly. "I thought she really did it for the family, but it turns out that she is the same as Land Marigold. She doesn't hesitate when it comes to cheating her own people." At the same time, the hall of care for one's family was filled with a fierce argument. The conflict between the two sides was nothing more than how to deal with their relationship with Ji Yunan. This matter involved the life and death of care for one's family. Thus, not only were the higher-ups of the family present, but some of the younger generation were also present. Ji Yunan is too domineering. Sooner or later, he will die a violent death. If the family continues to maintain a close relationship with him, it will only cause an unexpected disaster. He is already an eternal domain expert. Can we still fall out with him? That's right. Except for the one in Shu's family, no one can stop him now. If he turns around and kills care for one's family, who will stop him? Tianling died at his hands. Are we just going to let it go? What do you want? The elders of care for one's family were divided into two groups, and no one could convince the other. Second great-uncle Jiyu Tianqi sat in the main seat, his face full of worry. His hair seemed to have turned a lot whiter overnight. He was the real leader of care for one's family, so he naturally knew that he must not fall out with Ji Yunan. Otherwise, care for one's family would fall apart overnight. For someone like Ji Yunan who was all alone and possessed peerless strength, no one could restrain him at all. But Jiyu Tianling had the best relationship with him. Why had this bastard reached the eternal domain realm? If he had only reached the refinement realm, maybe care for one's family would have already attacked and killed him. But after seeing what had happened to Zhu Xuewen, no one dared to act rashly. The group of people gradually quieted down because both sides found that they could not convince the other at all. It was better to let Jiyu Tianqi make the decision. "Second brother, you decide." "Yes, second brother, no matter how you decide to deal with it, we will support you." Jiyu Tianqi was silent for a long time. In the end, he sighed and said, "Jiyu Nian, what do you think?" Suddenly, half of the people's eyes darkened, while the other half became complacent. Everyone knew that Ji Yunan had been brought in by Ji Yunyan. Did she even need to think about her opinion? Jiyu Tianqi's choice to ask her attitude had already expressed his opinion. Ji Yunyan's face was expressionless as he calmly said, "About Ji Yunan, wait." A crisp voice suddenly sounded, interrupting Ji Yunyan's words. A young girl was slowly walking over, holding a stack of information in her hand. "Xingzhu, what are you doing here?" An old man frowned and asked. The person who had come was Jiyu Xingzhu. At this moment, she seemed to have a card up her sleeve. She bowed and said, "Great-grandfather, I received news that Zhu Xuewen is seriously injured and on the verge of death. The 7 Stars squad has already rushed back to the 9th Star sector." 7 Stars squad? The old man's expression suddenly became serious. He was not unfamiliar with the name 7 Stars squad. It was a team made up of 7 Nuance Realm powerhouses that specialized in hunting Eternal Domain Realm star beasts. They had also come from the 9th star sector in the past, but their current cultivation level was already much higher than theirs. More importantly, among the 7 of them, 5 were Zhu Xuewen's direct disciples. There was no need for Ji Yunyan to say anything now. Even Jiyu Tianqi looked over. Jiyu Xingzhu was beaming with joy. Her entire being was different from usual. This was a bit like her younger self. Ever since Ji Yunyan became a transcendent, he hadn't seen her like this for a long time. All the elders seemed to have understood something. This girl didn't get along with Ji Yunyan in the past. During this period of time, it looked like she had completely sided with Ji Yunyan, but that wasn't the case deep down. Jiyu Xingzhu distributed the information in her hands. When it reached Ji Yunyan, she paused for a moment and revealed a bright smile. Ji Yunyan just glanced at her indifferently, the corners of his mouth curling up into a smile. It really is the 7 stars squad. But even though the 7 stars are strong, do they have the ability to kill Ji Yunnan? One of the elders asked. If Ji Yunnan was allowed to escape with his life, the consequences would be unimaginable. Jiyu Xingzhu seemed to be prepared for this. She continued to speak in her unique clear voice. It is the 7 stars squad that wants to find Ji Yunnan. We don't have to personally come forward. At the end of the information, we already have a suitable candidate. All the elders hurriedly flipped to the end of the information. Sure enough, there was another person's information. Chapter 65. Innate Stage Champion, Lu Wu. Acquired Stage Champion, Lin Yunyun. They're all acquaintances. Ji Yunnan looked at the results of the martial arts tournament in his hand and curled his lips. After Ji Yunnan's tournament, the martial arts tournament, which was originally the focus of attention, became less and less people paid attention to it. Because too many people died and were injured today, and their backgrounds were too big. In addition, more than half of the contestants in the martial arts tournament had withdrawn. Even if they won the championship, it didn't mean anything. Naturally, no one paid attention to it. Young master, are you going to present the award in person? Wang Dong asked cautiously. Ji Yunnan was first appointed as a judge by Ji Yunyan, but he was lazy and didn't go to watch any of the matches. He hid here alone and drank tea. Anyway, the main point of the event had been completed, and the results of the competition had nothing to do with Ji Yunnan. Just find someone else. Ji Yunnan waved his hand and said, yes. Wang Dong nodded, but then he seemed to think of something and quickly said, by the way, someone reported that Lin Yunyun used stimulants during the competition. She definitely used it. Otherwise, she couldn't even compete. Ji Yunnan said impatiently, if anyone has any objections, just kill them. There was no doubt that Lin Yunyun had to take drugs before the competition. She had to rely on this to relieve the pain, otherwise, she couldn't fight at all. Previously, he was still concerned about the task. Now that the event was about to be completed, what else did Ji Yunnan have to worry about? Understood. Wang Dong nodded repeatedly. I'll arrange for someone to do it immediately. Wang Dong's figure disappeared, but Land Marigold appeared again. Ji Yunnan showed a face of surprise and said, you haven't left yet. Land Marigold rolled her eyes. She didn't believe that with Ji Yunnan's current cultivation, he wouldn't be able to find out whether she had left or not. It was obvious that he was chasing her away. There's one person. If he accidentally offends you, I hope you can spare his life. Land Marigold said quickly. Oh. Ji Yunnan raised his eyebrows. He's my little cousin, why do you think I'll listen to you? Ji Yunnan raised his head slightly and smiled. You have a grudge against this Lu Wu, right? You want me to kill him? With 3 consecutive rhetorical questions, Lu Zhanyu swallowed all the words he wanted to say, and his face twitched a little. This guy's suspicion is really. Did he think in the opposite direction? In fact, Lu Zhanyu had really misunderstood Ji Yunnan. It was not that he was very considerate, but he was used to speculating about others with the worst of intentions. Lu Zhanyu wanted to play some tricks, but he ran into a wall at the last second. He could only turn around and leave without another word. After Ji Yunnan sat quietly for a while, the evil god's temple in his mind shook slightly. Completed evil event, martial arts tournament. Total sin points, 10. The martial arts tournament officially ended, and the sin points reward was given. The reward of 10 sin points was not out of Guam Nan's expectation. The difficulty of this event was neither high nor low. The martial arts tournament was only a setting and time limit, and it could be controlled by the players themselves, which lowered the external difficulty. However, finding the key person and getting an extraordinaire like Ji Nyan to participate was not easy, so it was given 10 sin points. The next moment, a new event message came from the evil gods Lin. Evil event triggered, adopt orphan Lin Yunyun. Lin Yunyun? Orphan? Ji Nan raised his eyebrows and shouted at the door. Old Wang. Wang Dong hurried in and heard Ji Nan say, Lin Yunyun has a dead father at home, right? Find someone to kill him. This time, Wang Dong did not say much and agreed. Lin Yunyun's family was poor, and killing an ordinary person was nothing to care for one's family. Young master, Lin Yunyun has a sister. Sister? How old is he? Ji Nan asked after thinking for a while. 17. Oh, then let's kill her too. She's too old. In the clean hospital, Lu Danza sat on the bed with a pale face, holding an injury report in his hand. On it was written, comminuted fracture of kneecap, high energy damage cannot be removed, recovery rate of injury is low. With the medical level of the red carp, a broken leg was not a big deal. However, the shadow power left by Ji Nan formed a high energy state, which made most medical methods ineffective. As a result, Lu Danza would probably be unable to stand and become a cripple. Son of a bitch. Lu Danza punched the quilt hard, and the report was crumpled, but he could not vent his anger. From a martial arts genius to a cripple with a broken leg, from a promising transcendent, it was all because of that man's 2 kicks. Why? Why is that scumbag a transcendent? Is there any justice in the world? Lu Danza clenched his fists, and his eyes were red. Just as he was sitting alone in the ward, roaring crazily, a voice came from the side. We can give you justice, but the question is, what can you pay for it? Lu Danza suddenly looked up and saw 7 people standing in a row at the door of his ward. The leader was quite recognizable because he had 3 hands. The world could function without anyone. Ji Nan's massacre was enough to shake the entire upper-class society of the Red Fish planet, but to the ordinary citizens, it was just that this year's martial arts tournament was a little shorter. After the martial arts competition, the military fell silent. Some people said that Hu Wei left the Red Carp overnight after learning the news, and no one knew where she went. Zhu Xuewen was sent to the hospital immediately, but because his injuries were too serious and he was too old, he died after struggling for 3 days. Care for one's family didn't say anything about it. They neither broke with Ji Nan, nor stood out to unite with him, as if they had become bystanders. However, Zhu Xuewen had great influence in all walks of life, especially in the martial arts world. Countless of his disciples organized spontaneously and publicly demanded that Ji Nan be punished. Some of them marched in the street, some blocked the door of care for one's family, and some ran to the Shu family to ask the old man of the Shu family to come out and do justice. Of course, it didn't work. Naturally, there were politicians to deal with them, and care for one's family, and the Shu family didn't care about these people. As for why no one came to Ji Nan directly. First, no one was willing to die. Second, there were too few people who knew him, and Ji Nan's whereabouts were mysterious and difficult to trace. But today was different, because Ji Nan finally appeared in a relatively public place. Capital Children's Welfare Home. On a tall building not far away, Lu Danza sat in a wheelchair and looked nervously at the welfare home downstairs. Beside him stood a fashionably dressed blue-haired girl. Chapter 66. Outside the welfare center, the 4th of the 7 Stars squad was stunned. He couldn't understand why someone could still move after being hit by his darts. Could it be that this person's physique was stronger than the astral beasts in the endless void? This question didn't linger for long. When he saw the smile on Ji Nan's face, he had a bad feeling. The next moment, he felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. His whole body was sent flying, and then he fell heavily. He's not dead. Nuanced state. Old Four spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. His heart was already filled with alarm, and Ji Nan's fleeting voice also entered his ears at this moment. He tried to stand up, but he only felt a gust of wind in front of him. He tilted his head and felt the left side of his face burning. Ji Nan appeared. The dragon heart pendant in front of his chest was still glowing. His punch, enhanced by the giant dragon power, hit the left side of the fourth's face and tore it off. The left side of the fourth's face was torn off, along with the skin and flesh. Countless pulsing blood vessels and broken facial bones were revealed. Without the support of the eye socket, the eyeball naturally fell off, and only a few optic nerves were still connected. The fourth, sorrowful cries could be heard as a few silhouettes appeared and surrounded the fourth brother. Their faces were filled with grief and indignation. They were scattered around, waiting for Ji Nan to run for his life, so that they could stop him. But who would have thought? Lan Bing was among them. At this moment, her face was no longer as calm as before. She roared, "Kill! Kill him! What kind of *T strategy is that? Everyone, let's go!" The burly man with 3 arms was the first to rush forward, screaming, "Ah! Let me do it!" His body was 4 times the size of a normal person. Other than his 4 normal limbs, there was also a giant hand on his neck, which looked especially scary. This burly man was Han Lingtian, ranked 2nd in the 7 Stars squad. He was born with great strength and had a straightforward personality. He was best at using brute force to kill his opponents. He was also one of Zhu Xuewen's disciples. When he was young, he didn't know any martial arts and was often bullied in his hometown. Later on, he embarked on the path of cultivation and became unstoppable. He had only just stepped into the refinement realm, but he was already one of the strongest of the 7. At this moment, he leaped high, his 3 arms spread out, and attacked Ji Nan from 3 different angles. However, Ji Nan's expression was still cold. He raised his hand and punched Han Lingtian's face without hesitation. He actually ignored Han Lingtian's attack and wanted to exchange blows with him. Han Lingtian was rough but meticulous. Even though he was furious, his movements were extremely precise. A punch to the side of his face, a punch to the neck, and a punch to the heart. He believed that as long as his 3 punches landed, even a real giant beast would suffer a great loss. This person actually dared to fight head-on with me. I must teach him a lesson. Bang! 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 Both of them hit each other at almost the same time, but the result was unexpected. Ji Nan still stood where he was, not moving an inch, but Han Lingtian was sent flying and smashed into a nearby building. "Second brother, how are you?" Lan Bing hurriedly went to check and saw Han Lingtian covering his nose with one hand and walking out with bloodshot eyes. He mumbled, "He is very strong." Lan Bing's anger grew. "We underestimated him. But no matter how strong he is, he will die here today." "That's right. Big sis, let's attack together." The other members of the 7 Stars squad finally stabilized the fourth's injuries and spoke at the same time. Not only was the crowd excited, but Ji Nan was frowning and touching the side of his face. He had a strong physique, and with the passive effect of damage reduction by 50%, he was not injured at all. In fact, due to the dulling effect, his sense of pain was blocked by more than half, and he didn't feel anything at all. "But, my damage is too low." Ji Nan shook his head. When he killed Zhu Xuewen, he felt that his damage was starting to fall behind since he had been focusing on his survivability. There was no problem with the passive skill, but the key was his weapon, the 4 origin crossbow that he used when he was at level 2, and it could no longer keep up with the times. Thus, he sank his consciousness into the evil god's temple, opened the equipment list, and selected a weapon. He had wanted to buy this weapon for a long time, and it was very compatible with his attributes. However, he had not been able to deal enough damage, so he did not buy it. After all, it was too expensive. Purchasing weapon, Blade of the Bloody King, 500 points will be deducted. Confirm. Confirm. Ji Nan clicked confirm while feeling heartache. After deducting the 500 points, he was only left with 100 points. The Bloody King's blade, which was also known as the Blood Sword by the players, was a true level 3 weapon that could only be purchased by level 3 evil gods. Be it the price or power, the 4 origin crossbow could not compare to it. The attributes of the Blood Sword were very simple, and its purpose was also very clear, which was extreme damage. Bloody King's Blade, high attack, ignores additional defense, sharpness enhancement, triggers blood curse when an attack hits. There was also a small line of words at the back, this is a cursed godly weapon. Whenever your attack hits your opponent, you will receive the same amount of damage. The 100% armor penetration, the sharpness enhancement effect, and the blood sword's own super high attack made this weapon far more powerful than it was worth. Therefore, the game designer was very considerate and added a debuff to it, which meant hurting others and hurting oneself. Any player who used this weapon to attack would receive the same amount of damage as the enemy, which greatly reduced the overall strength of the weapon. However, the players were very intelligent, and they quickly found the attributes that complemented the weapon from other equipment and skills. For example, Ji Yunan had the passive and Dawn's Praise effects, which not only reduced damage, but also had 3 times the self-recovery ability. Come on, let's hurt each other. Outside the welfare center, Lin Yunyun stared blankly at Ji Yunan for a while, her eyes slightly unfocused. Just as she was about to speak, she saw that he had already recovered. At the same time, he raised his right hand, and a long sword appeared out of thin air. The sword was blood-red in color, and the blade was long and thin. It emitted a faint blood-red glow, and looked very demonic. Ji Yunan had never used the blood sword in his past life, and this was the first time he held it in his hands. He had to admit that it felt good, and there was even a faint sense of bloodlust in his brain. Then, let's kill. Ji Yunan looked at the 7 Stars squad from afar, and his originally calm gaze was gradually dyed with a hint of madness. Together, Lan Bing put the 4th aside, and looked coldly at Ji Yunan, and said in a low voice, "Ah." Han Lingtian rubbed his nose, and continued to charge forward while screaming "Ah." Even when they were attacking the galactic beast, he still took on the role of a meat shield, and their team had always had a clear division of labor. This time, the enemy was indeed very strong, but the 7 Stars squad was not to be trifled with. In Han Lingtian's mind, it was as if those years, when the 7 of them roamed the universe, killing one dire beast after another, those magnificent scenes. Why am I flying? In Han Lingtian's vision, he seemed to be flying, and the scene was still flying up and down, and the world was spinning. In the eyes of the others, it was Ji Yunan who had floated over, and slashed at his head. Chapter 67. Ji Yunan held the blood-red sword in his hand. Blood spurted out from the wound, dyeing half of his body red. He looked like a demon that walked out of the abyss. After decapitating the enemy, the blood sword flashed red. Ji Yunan felt a slight chill on his neck. 1/3 of his neck had been cut open. The effect of the blood curse was activated. The damage was exactly equal to the damage inflicted on Ji Yunan. However, Ji Yunan had the passivation skill. Not only did it reduce the damage, but it also blocked most of the pain. It was not affected at all. He stretched out his left hand and pressed it on top of his head, straightening his neck that had been cut in half. The cut was healing quickly. His muscle tissue was regenerating, and his skin was growing back quickly. Why were the blood sword and the Dawn Sage robe complementary equipment? The reason was simple. The effect of Dawn's Praise would only take effect if the target was not attacked for 3 seconds. The damage from the blood curse was judged as self-damage, not being attacked. As for the passivation effect, as long as the damage was dealt, it would be reduced. The 3 were a perfect match. The remaining members of the 7 Stars squad were about to surround and beat up Ji Yunan. However, they saw Han Lingtian being decapitated. They were dumbfounded. Han Lingtian died on the spot. Ji Yunan held the blood sword in one hand and supported his head with the other. He walked towards them step by step. As he walked, the wound on his neck was still bleeding. The whole scene looked very strange. Ji Yunan's pace seemed slow, but he was actually very fast. In the blink of an eye, he had arrived in front of one of the members of the squad. This person was the youngest in the squad. He was once a genius, but he was already prepared. He drew his sword from his waist and charged forward. "Kill!" The young man shouted angrily. "Remember, the name of the person who killed you is..." Swoosh. Ji Yunan slashed down diagonally, cutting the young man and his sword in half from his right shoulder. The young man's words stopped abruptly. He didn't even get to say his name. A wound appeared on Ji Yunan's right shoulder at the same time. However, it was not as serious as the one on his neck. It was just a bloody mark. This young man's physique and defense were far inferior to Han Lingtian's, so the damage he received was much lower. Under the effect of Praise of Dawn, the wound showed signs of healing before it could spread. It disappeared in the blink of an eye. Lan Bing felt her scalp go numb, but as the commander of the 7 Stars squad, she forced herself to calm down. Everyone, calm down. She stared at Ji Yunan with her beautiful eyes. His knife isn't normal, but as long as we avoid it, before she could finish her sentence, she felt a chill on her head. Thus, he subconsciously activated his divine ability, and his entire body instantly disappeared, turning into a cloud of mist that floated to the side before transforming back into his human form. When Lan Bing reappeared, her forehead was covered in cold sweat. She had traveled in the Sea of Stars for more than 10 years, and she had been through a lot of life-and-death situations, but none of them were as thrilling as this, atomization. Interesting. Ji Yunan's voice sounded near and far, as if coming from all directions. Lan Bing suppressed the fear in her heart. Just as she was about to speak, she felt that her surroundings were quiet. She turned around abruptly, and only then did she realize a shocking fact. Her other teammates, including the 4th, who had half of his face torn off, had all been sliced in half. None of them were spared. Only then did Lan Bing realize that Ji Yunan had attacked 6 times at the same time. Relying on his incredible speed, he had attacked 6 people at the same time. If it wasn't for her special divine ability that allowed her to turn into mist, which made her unafraid of knives and swords, she would have died under the knife as well. The anger from the wanton slaughter of her teammates and the instinctive fear of death surged into Lan Bing's heart at the same time, causing her to slow down. At this moment, Ji Yunan's knife fell down. However, just as the knife was about to touch Lan Bing, something strange happened. The space above Lan Bing's head seemed to be pulled open layer by layer, and when the blood knife entered it, it was like entering an endless void, unable to fall for a moment. Lan Bing was shocked, and she hurriedly turned into mist and dodged to the side. Space. Ji Yunan's expression became slightly serious as he said softly. The level of the law of space was extremely high, and the person who attacked secretly was quite good. Lan Bing obviously realized what had happened, and a look of surprise appeared on her face. "Thank you, Elder Shu, for saving me." As if to echo Lan Bing's words, a figure slowly appeared behind her. It was an ordinary old man in an ordinary grey robe. If he were to be placed on the street, 90% of people would ignore him. However, he was a real big shot in the Red Carp and even in the 9th Star region. He was the pillar of the Shu family, the only eternal domain powerhouse on the Red Carp, Shu Yuanjun, Elder Shu. When this Elder Shu became famous at a young age, it was also when the Shu family was in a critical situation and was almost reduced to a second-rate family. It could be said that it was because of Shu Yuanjuan's efforts to turn the tide that the Shu family had survived until now and still stood at the top of the capital region. Apart from him, the extraordinary power of the Shu family was far from comparable to that of the Jiyu and Long families. Shu Yuanjun. Even Ji Yunan had heard of his name. This person had spatial skills, and although his attack power was not very strong, it was not easy to kill him. Even if it was Ji Yunan, he could only think of a brainless way to chase after him and exhaust him to death. But there was no benefit in killing him, so why waste the effort? As a player, Ji Yunan just ignored the rules. He never thought of himself as a bloodthirsty person. Well, definitely not. So, Ji Yunan calmed himself down and said, "If you want to save this woman, be careful that I slaughter the entire Shu family." Lan Bing's eyes suddenly widened, and the anger in her heart surged again. This person was really reckless. He actually dared to threaten Elder Shu to his face. Even if he advanced to the Eternal Domain realm, it was impossible for him to be Elder Shu's opponent. There were decades of accumulation in between. Shu Yuanjun said helplessly, "Lan Bing is the daughter of my good friend. Since you have already killed Aubergist Ju to vent your anger, why do you have to kill?" Before he could finish the last word, he felt his vision blur, and Ji Yunan's figure suddenly disappeared. A head-on slash. Shu Yuanjun was not like Lan Bing, who would ignore Ji Yunan's power. His expression was solemn, and the space in front of him once again overlapped, and he was pulled far away. This was a copy of the previous move, but Saint Seiya would not fall for it twice. The moment before Ji Yunan's crimson saber fell, the power of shadow suddenly surged out, instantly breaking through the spatial wall. Xu Yuanjuan's spatial rules were destroyed, so it naturally lost its effect. The old man's expression changed slightly, and he suddenly raised his right hand. His sleeve instantly spread out infinitely large and thick, blocking the saber. In the next moment, his figure had already appeared 10 meters away. He did not suffer any injuries, but his right sleeve was cut off. He frowned and was about to speak, but Ji Yunan's figure was already close, not giving him any chance at all, and he slashed down again. He can actually use his own speed to keep up with the spatial transfer. Xu Yuanjun saw what Ji Yunan had done, and he was suddenly inexplicably shocked. Was he still King human? In the short span of a second, Ji Yunan had slashed 31 times, and Xu Yuanjun had also teleported 31 times, dodging every attack just in time. However, at the last slash, Xu Yuanjuan's figure paused, and he could not help but be stunned when he did not see Ji Yunan following. Then he smiled bitterly and shook his head helplessly. On the other side, Lan Bing, who was still in place, did not even have a chance to react before she was already beheaded by Ji Yunan with the full power of shadow erupting. She did not have a chance to atomize at all. It turned out that after 31 teleportations, the palm of Xu Yuanjuan's soul just happened to miss Lan Bing. A breeze blew, and the grass of the welfare house was already covered with flesh and blood. A faint smell of blood was blown into the noses of the people around. Chapter 68. After standing still for a while, Xu Yuanjun finally chose to leave quietly. He and Ji Yunan couldn't do anything to each other, but he still had his family and relatives. As for Ji Yunan, it didn't seem like he cared about care for one's family. Seeing that he had left, Ji Yunan didn't have any intention of chasing after him. He smiled and put away the blood knife. At this time, the injuries on his body had completely recovered. Even the half of his neck that had been broken had completely disappeared. Xu Yuanjun was a troublesome person to deal with. Since he was still in the middle of a mission, he wasn't in a hurry to deal with him. As for killing his entire family, killing them wouldn't give him any sin points, so what was there to kill? A true expert would never waste his energy on something that didn't bring him any benefits. Moreover, Xu's family was Xu Yuanjuan's Achilles' heel. Keeping his family alive was the best threat. A sword hanging over one's head was often more useful than one that had already fallen. The moment Ji Yunan led Lin Yunyun out of the welfare center, the evil god's temple sent him another notification. Completed mission: adopt orphan girl Lin Yunyun. Total sin points, 8. Is there 8 points? Not bad, this way my sin points will reach 120. Ji Yunan silently calculated the difficulty of this mission and finally nodded. The calculation of sin points was generally related to the difficulty of the mission, especially this kind of mission with a clear goal. The more enemies that obstructed the completion of the mission, the higher the sin points. So sometimes, players would deliberately find trouble for themselves, but there weren't many suitable opportunities. This time, the appearance of the 7 Stars squad could be considered a stroke of luck for Ji Yunan. Lu Danza was still sitting in his wheelchair in shock. The thick smell of blood on the grass almost made him feel nauseous. But this kind of sensory stimulation was far inferior to the chill in his heart. He might not know what the 7 Stars squad was, but a total of 7 extraordinaires had died in the hands of Ji Yunan. This was the truth in front of him. Lu Danza could not help but sink into deep despair. For the first time, he doubted whether he really had the ability to reach Ji Yunan's current level in this lifetime, and what realm would Ji Yunan be at that time? However, there was nothing to be suspicious about, because Ji Yunan had already walked to his side and was holding Lin Yunyun's hand. Did you bring them here? Ji Yunan lowered his head and asked as if he didn't recognize Lu Danza at all. It was a purely questioning and curious tone, without the slightest hint of threat. Before Lu Danza could reply, Ji Yunan patted him on the shoulder. Thank you so much. He sent a wave of monsters to me. As he spoke, he reached out and broke his neck. Lin Yunyun looked up at him. The way you express your gratitude is really unique. Thank you. Lin Yunyun felt a chill on her neck. Of course, Ji Yunan wouldn't do anything to Lin Yunyun. Right now, he wanted to take her home and hang her on the wall, then wait for the mission event to refresh. Speaking of which, after the adoption incident, the evil god's temple didn't give any more notifications. This chain of events clearly wasn't over yet, and there were many questions that hadn't been answered. For example, what was Lin Yunyun's background? Ji Yunan didn't believe that someone would be full of vital energy for no reason. It was obvious that this whole incident had revolved around her, and there had to be some other story behind it. There was no next step, which meant that he hadn't met the conditions to trigger it. For example, the martial arts tournament incident was triggered when Ji Yunan heard about the martial arts tournament from Ji Yunyan. What could it be? Ji Yunan sat in the attic of Care for One's Family, stroking his chin as he pondered. For a moment, Ji Yunan was stuck on the clues, but the result of the battle between him and the Seven Stars squad spread at an incredible speed. Perhaps Care for One's Family had pushed for it, or perhaps Shu's family had secretly helped, but the result was the same. The Seven Stars squad had been wiped out, and Ji Yunan's name had spread throughout the entire Red Carp. Even in the Star Zone, his achievements had begun to spread. After Care for One's Family heard the result, one of the elders stood up immediately and directly tied up Jiyu Xingzhu and sent her to Ji Yunan. Jiyu Xingzhu's clumsy plan of killing with a borrowed knife couldn't be hidden for long, so it was better to admit defeat as soon as possible. So that's how it is. Ji Yunan looked at Jiyu Xingzhu, then said to the elder of Care for One's Family next to him with a smile, "I'm a crude person, and I don't like to use my brain. If you didn't mention it, I wouldn't have thought of it. Can I do whatever I want to her?" Ji Yunan pointed at Jiyu Xingzhu. The latter's meridians had been sealed, and she was tied up like an ordinary girl with a few hemp ropes. The person who tied her up was obviously a skilled teacher, as he didn't cover any of the places that should be exposed. Instead, he tied up Jiyu Xingzhu's flat figure in an exquisite manner. Of course, as long as you enjoy yourself. The elder didn't put on airs at all, and even used honorifics. Anyway, thank you. Ji Yunan smiled and said, "By the way, what's your name?" Jiyu Tianwen. Elder Jiyu Tianwen left Ji Yunan's room with an awkward look on his face, so only he and Jiyu Xingzhu were left in the room. Jiyu Xingzhu's mouth was gagged with a white handkerchief, and she sat curled up in the corner. She didn't look like her usual capable and strong self, and looked delicate and pitiful. Ji Yunan took off the handkerchief and said with great interest, "Did Land Marigold ask you to come? Are you just trying to seduce me, or do you have something else to say?" His words stunned Jiyu Xingzhu. Her eyes were a little dull, and she could only force herself to say, What are you talking about? Stop pretending." Ji Yunan waved his hand and said, "You work under Ji Yunyan, so why did you get the news about the Seven Star Squad first, and no one else knows? It's obvious that someone else told you. Recently, the only outsiders who have power outside of the Red Carp are Land Marigold and her sister, and only she has the motive to do this. That Jiyu Tianwen, if he's not in cahoots with you, he's just being used by you, and he's specially sent you to me. You want to trap me, and then replace Ji Yunyan? This is also Land Marigold's intention, right? You really have the heart of a snake and scorpion. Just because Ji Yunyan is aware of it, you want to take the initiative to gain the upper hand?" Ji Yunan analyzed with a smile, and added in the end, "You're the one taking the risk, and you're sharing the benefits with that Lu fellow. You're really a Lei Feng." The corner of Jiyu Xingzhu's mouth twitched, and her face was a little gloomy. She suddenly had a feeling of being stripped naked, and standing in front of someone else, and the other party's gaze was so cold and piercing. But after she was seen through, she relaxed, and straightened her body, and moved closer to Ji Yunan's ear with a smile, saying, "Don't you want to know what I'm going to use to seduce you?" Chapter 69. When Jiyu Xingzhu left, her expression was even worse than that of Jiyu Tianwen's. Of course, her mood wasn't in Ji Yunan's consideration. It wasn't that Ji Yunan wasn't interested in women, but he wasn't interested in passerby NPCs. As a veteran player, he didn't mind being obsessed with female NPCs, but at the very least, they had to be ones he was familiar with and had strategies and developed. In the next few days, Ji Yunan started to wander around. He even went to Lin Yunyan's hometown, trying to find the trigger of the incident, but to no avail. Instead, he encountered a few waves of suicide attacks, mostly from Ju Shuowen's disciples and grand disciples. They probably thought of themselves as warriors in novels and felt that they could enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. Unfortunately, in Ji Yunan's eyes, their actions were no different from suicide. The military also sent a message, which was quite interesting. The letter came from Huang Wu, the mayor of the Star Domain Army. He was Huang Qi's uncle. Huang Qi was the one who had brought her younger brother to die in order to avenge Hu Wei. Huang Wu's letter was very polite. The gist of it was that his nephew wasn't very smart, so kill him as you please. However, Hu Wei doted on her younger brother, so be careful. Just as Land Marigold had expected, this mayor didn't value his nephew very much and wasn't willing to go against an eternal domain realm. He even wrote a letter to express his goodwill. After all, reality wasn't a novel. There were very few situations where the younger one was killed and the older one jumped out at any moment. Unless the other party felt that this was a mortal enemy such as the Seven Stars Squad, or Hu Wei. Ji Yunan smiled and burned the letter, not taking it to heart at all. With his current strength, his survivability far exceeded his actual combat strength. He had long since reached a terrifying level. Even a level 4 player in the game would find it difficult to kill him unless their abilities were completely countered. The Shadow Evil God of Agility was one of the most difficult paths to kill, not to mention that he had chosen the blunting skill. Ji Yunan's search was fruitless, so he had no choice but to try to dig it out from Lin Yunyun. Occasionally, he would study the origin of the girl's strange physique, as well as the specific characteristics of this physique. Sometimes, he would drug Lin Yunyun and send her to Ji Yunyan. This kind of weird Yuri girl who liked little lollis was obviously not a good person. It was normal for her to have a mission. Unfortunately, there were still no clues to the incident, even though he had a few more videotapes in his hands. On this day, Ji Yunan, who was frustrated because of the incident, asked Land Marigold out again. Of course, he didn't want to find someone to vent his anger on, but to see if she had any new tasks. You mean, the mission requires a medium-sized plane, regardless of the difficulty? Land Marigold was puzzled by Ji Yunan's strange request. Yes. Ji Yunan nodded and said, you don't need to know the reason. Just know the requirements. Land Marigold shrugged and said, it's rare to see a mission that would describe the size of the plane in advance, unless you're looking for a mission in a known plane. Is there a way? Ji Yunan asked with his hands crossed. If he could get this method, it would be fine even if he gave up on the serial case. He could get the reward anyway, and there were points in the instance dungeons. Land Marigold frowned and thought for a moment. It's not impossible, but I need a large number of missions to choose from. This requires a high level of authority on the reincarnation platform. Can I join the reincarnation platform directly? Ji Yunan asked, remembering his situation in the Mingyu. Yes, but organizations like the Astral Gate won't accept people easily, especially not in a remote sector like the Ninth Star region. Ji Yunan nodded. Looks like it's time to change the map. Land Marigold looked at him strangely. She didn't quite understand his words, but she still said, I know of a small reincarnation organization that was established not long ago. Are you interested? Of course, Ji Yunan said without hesitation. He couldn't wait to find a way to accept missions. Then he could find a mission directly. Land Marigold finally smiled. The organization is in the 6-star region. I can take you there. In exchange, do me a favor? Okay. Ji Yunan nodded. If he wanted to obtain information from an NPC, he had to complete the prerequisite mission. This was very much in line with the player's values. Land Marigold began to talk about the matter. She needed Ji Yunan to help her. To put it bluntly, they wanted him to be their fighter, to fight for the Lu clan once and win a battle. When it came to the interests of the branches of the Lu's family, it wasn't good for them to go against each other, so they used this method to decide. In reality, this was one of the reasons they came to the Red Carp in the first place. During the Hu Wei incident, Ji Yunan didn't give his older sister, Lu Xinyu, any face at all, but she still came to him because of this. But as Ji Yunan made more and more trouble, Lu Xinyu felt that she couldn't offer him anything that could move him, so she didn't bring it up again. So, when do we leave? Where is the location? Ji Yunan asked. The sooner the better, time is tight, Land Marigold said. The location is at 66 Amaterasu, our team's home field. Ji Yunan was about to speak when the evil god's temple shook. Evil event triggered, seize Max's eye. Ji Yunan suddenly cursed in his heart. So the next event was triggered by Land Marigold, or at 66 Amaterasu. Why didn't you say so earlier? Ji Yunan thought of his repeated probing these days and couldn't help but feel annoyed. It was a waste of time. But the clue finally appeared. He asked with concentration, have you heard of Max or Max's eye? Max? Land Marigold thought for a while and finally shook her head. You're going to 66 Amaterasu? Ji Yunan stood in Ji Yunan's room and asked with a frown. Yes, I'm going at the invitation of the Lu's family. Ji Yunan put down the information in his hand and rubbed his eyebrows tiredly. He had been reading ancient books for 7 hours, from ancient times to modern times, all about 66 Amaterasu and the name Maximum. There were many names or items that matched Maximum. He needed to compare them one by one to see which one could be the target of his mission. Ji Yunan didn't look too good, but she wasn't very disappointed. Care for one's family had spent most of its energy on the development of the plane recently and didn't care much about the astral realm. If Ji Yunan, this unstable factor, was willing to leave on his own, it might not be a bad thing. But, why are you taking Lin Yunyun away too? Ji Yunyan's face was dark. This was what she really wanted to ask. Ji Yunan couldn't help but smile. Why? Can't bear to part with her? His mocking tone made Ji Yunyenji clench her teeth so hard that they made a cracking sound. Ever since her secret was discovered, she couldn't say anything in front of Ji Yunan. Logically speaking, this secret wasn't a big deal at all, but her heart unconsciously softened a little. This high-quality version of Land Marigold, even if she was unparalleled and astute, was still a girl in her 20s. Ji Yunan stood up and patted her shoulder. I'm definitely taking Lin Yunyun away, but I can recommend you a new target. In that world, there's an older loli called Yang Xiaoxiao. I'm sure she'll suit your taste. Ji Yunyan stared at him for a while, hesitation flashed across her face. Finally, she asked, how old? At least oh, she's not young anymore. But her strength improved by leaps and bounds when she was young, and she still has the figure of a young girl. A legal loli. Chapter 70. In the boundless sea of stars, a medium-sized but rather glamorous starship was slowly cruising. Inside the starship, Ji Yunan was flipping through an ancient book under the pale yellow light. After a while, he took off his gold-rimmed glasses and rubbed his eyes tiredly. Then, he recorded something on a piece of paper beside him. Names of people, places, items. 352 clues related to Max, 41 of which can be related to the Eye of Max. After going through the ancient books and materials for a few days, Ji Yunan finally sorted out the clues related to Max. As a professional player, whenever there was a clue related to a mission, Ji Yunan didn't like to ask others to do it himself. It wasn't that he didn't have people he could use, nor was he a natural workaholic. It was just that he didn't trust other people's abilities. He always felt that it was easy to miss some important clues if he asked others to do it himself, but he wouldn't, to put it bluntly, he was narcissistic. Ji Uncle Ji, the two Miss Lus are looking for you. Lin Yunyun's voice came from outside, but when she called him, she was obviously hesitant. As Lin Yunyun's adoptive father, Ji Yunan decisively raised his seniority and flatly refused to be called brother. After failing to induce the little girl to call him dad, he finally called him uncle. When Ji Yunan came to the outer room, the two sisters, Lu Xinyu and Land Marigold, were already waiting there. Ji Yunan and Lu Xinyu were brought onto the starship by Land Marigold. At that time, Lu Xinyu was still looking for help outside, so today was the first time the two met after they parted ways. Come, call me sister, Ji Yunan said to Lin Yunyun. Lin Yunyun greeted them obediently. Hello, Sister Luz. Hello. Lu Xinyu replied with a smile. She had a gentle temperament, and she especially liked little girls like Lin Yunyun. All right, you can go and play by yourself first. Okay, Uncle Lu Xinyu, no matter what, Mr. Gu is willing to lend a hand. Thank you so much. Although Lin Yunyun's address made her a little confused, the joy on Lu Xinyu's face was not fake. She had already heard about Ji Yunan's achievements. Ji Yunan's reputation in Redcarp wasn't very good, but Lu Xinyu wasn't a pedantic person. Lu's family was a real super aristocratic family, so it was impossible for their descendants to be too naive. Ji Yunan smiled and said, "You're welcome. This is just a transaction." Ji Yunan would provide them with military force, and Lu's family would assist Ji Yunan in finding the Eye of Maximum. This was the deal between the two parties. As the next clue to the series of events, the Eye of Max appeared when 66 Amaterasu was mentioned. Therefore, Ji Yunan had reason to suspect that the clue was on 66 Amaterasu. As the key person in the incident, Lin Yunyun naturally had to come along. Therefore, Sister Ji Yunyan had to suffer and temporarily find Yang Xiaoxiao to solve her physiological needs. Ji Yunan and Lu Xinyu chatted for a while. It was the latter who was basically thanking him, while Land Marigold acted like a human statue and didn't take the initiative to speak at all. She knew that Ji Yunan had always been a person who didn't hold back his words and wouldn't help her hide her identity. If she wasn't careful, she would be exposed. It's still 2 days to reach 66 Amaterasu. Ji Yunan, why don't you come out for a walk? Lu Xinyu said with a smile. The scenery of the endless sea of stars can't be seen anywhere else. On the other side of the starship, a man and a woman from Lu's family were talking. This starship was privately owned by Lu's family. Other than Ji Yunan and the others, there were also other children of the Luca clan and the helpers they invited. Cousin Huayun, I heard that you invited an interstellar hunter this time. The woman gently leaned on the railing of the deck and said with a smile. The woman's name was Lu Jing. She was from a relatively remote branch of Lu's family. This time, she was only here to join in the fun. The cousin Huayun she mentioned was one of the more famous children of Lu's family. He was also from 66 Amaterasu. Whether it was his connections or his own ability, he was quite good. Yes, a 5-star interstellar hunter. Lu Huayun didn't hide it and said with a smile. Lu Jing was stunned when she heard this. Then, she exclaimed, 5-star. There aren't many in the entire 9th star field, right? Could it be? Lu Huayun waved his hand and said, don't guess blindly. It's Guan Shanxue, the disciple of Mr. Kang of Yin Yang Tower. He just reached 5-star 2 months ago. Oh. Lu Jing seemed a little disappointed, but she quickly became happy again. Guan Shanxue has been a transcendent for many years. Looks like Sister Xinyu will lose to you again, cousin. Lu Huayun's family had never been on good terms with Land Marigold and her sister. Lu Jing said this to please them. Ha ha ha. The sisters have already gone to the Red Carp. What kind of powerful helpers can they find? Lu Huayun laughed heartily. True experts don't stay on administrative planets. They're all adventuring in the universe. There were countless relics and treasures in the universe, so it could attract top martial artists. Lu Huayun wasn't wrong. Lu Jing complimented him a few more times and suddenly said, Cousin Huayun, I heard that Zhonyu brought a helper with her. That person even brought a little girl. Oh. Lu Huayun seemed to have heard something that interested him. He laughed loudly and said, not bad, Xiao Jing, I, your cousin, will accept your kindness. A moment later, Ji Yunan held Lin Yunyun's hand and walked slowly in the middle of the starship. Next to them was a transparent floor-to-ceiling window that reflected the view of the universe outside. Lin Yunyun was only a 13-year-old girl. She had already rushed to the window and looked at the endless galaxy enviously. However, she looked like she had never seen the world. Of course, Lin Yunyun had never seen much of the world. Her actions attracted a burst of laughter from the people around her. Lin Yunyun was enjoying the view of the galaxy when she was startled by the laughter. She turned around and looked behind her. It turned out that the Starship restaurant was behind her. The original intention of this design was to let the customers in the restaurant see the stars when they lifted their heads. The girl looked at the customers' smiles and finally realized that her actions had been seen by them. She blushed instantly. On the other hand, Ji Yunan and Land Marigold didn't have any expression on their faces. Land Marigold was shrewd and controlled her emotions well. As for Ji Yunan, little sister, I think you should bring them to have a meal first. A magnetic voice sounded. It was a man's voice. He couldn't hide the smile in his voice. It's just the universe. There are plenty of opportunities to see it. The man in the silver suit lowered his head and said to Lin Yunyun, little sister, don't you think so? His gaze was a little playful, causing Lin Yunyun's body to shrink. Land Marigold stood at the side and smiled. Cousin Huayun, I advise you to put away your thoughts. There are some people you can't afford to offend. Oh. Lu Huayun narrowed his eyes and finally looked at Ji Yunan. How should I address you, brother? However, Ji Yunan ignored him. He was still looking at the starry sky outside the window. Land Marigold smiled and said, this is Mr. Ji Yunan. Lu Huayun frowned. He vaguely felt that the name was familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had heard it. Chapter 71. Uncle. Uncle. Ji Yunan turned around and looked at her with confusion. What is it? Upon hearing that, Lu Huayun almost laughed out loud. He had taken Land Marigold's warning seriously, but this person was even more of a country bumpkin. She was fascinated by the galaxy. As for the caution in his heart, he tossed it aside. Ji Yunan was looking at the galaxy, but his thoughts were different from normal people's. With my body, I should be able to survive in a vacuum, right? Ji Yunan thought to himself. In this world, break world classes could travel through space. In the game, he had never encountered such a thing. His body was far more extraordinary than normal, so it should not be a problem. Still, he was not 100% sure. Ji Yunan turned around and asked Land Marigold, how much strength do I need to break this glass window? Land Marigold was shocked. She had been on 70 or 80 ships before, but this was the first time someone had asked her that. Before she could answer, Lu Huayun laughed and said, if you want to know, why don't you try it? He coldly laughed. All the materials on the starship were made by the military. The floor-to-ceiling windows were the most important. What kind of a country bumpkin did this person come from? When Ji Yunan heard that, he turned his head around. He looked at Lu Huayun calmly. It made Lu Huayun feel weird. That makes sense. Ji Yunan sounded like he agreed. Before Lu Huayun could relax, he felt his head tighten. It was unknown when Ji Yunan had appeared next to him. He grabbed his hair and pushed his head forward. He slammed it into the glass window. Dong. The dull sound echoed in the restaurant, and everyone in the restaurant was stunned. Ji Yunan did not stop moving. He was still holding Lu Huayun's head. He used his head as a weapon and kept slamming it into the glass window. What was interesting was that there was no difference in the strength and angle of his every strike. The only thing that had changed was that after Lu Huayun's head had been hit repeatedly, his skull had fractured piece by piece. The shape of his skull had changed, which affected his strength. Dong. 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 The noise was still coming. Some people in the restaurant stood up, some cursed, and some even rushed over. Only Ji Yunan continued to do as he pleased, until 30% strength, 25 times, Ji Yunan said calmly as he threw Lu Huayun's badly mutilated face to the side. In front of him, a spiderweb-like crack had appeared on the special glass that isolated the inside from the outside. When this crack appeared in front of the crowd that was originally agitated instantly stopped in their tracks. None of them dared to approach Ji Yunan. In the cafeteria of Starship, Lu Huayun had already been sent away for treatment. The crack caused by his head was surrounded by a dozen or so maintenance personnel, who were sweating profusely as they repaired it. Mr. Ji, an old man in white, smiled bitterly and said helplessly. A white-robed old man smiled bitterly and said helplessly, I hope you won't do such a dangerous thing in the future. This is irresponsible for your own life and disregards the safety of all the people on the ship. This old man was the captain of Starship. When he heard that someone had smashed a crack on Starship, his hair almost turned white. He quickly brought a dozen or so people over. Fortunately, it did not cause a disaster. Faced with the captain's persuasion, Ji Yunan's face remained expressionless. Perhaps he did not hear what the old man said because his gaze was still fixed on the crack. He had been paying attention to the repair of the crack. That's right. How can there be such a person? He actually beat up young Master Huayun to such a state. This person is a terrorist. Who the hell let him out? That's right. We request that he be chased off Starship. Otherwise, we won't go on this 66 Amaterasu. That's right. Voices began to spread among the onlookers, and they gradually turned into a common desire to kick Ji Yunan out of the starship. Lu Xinyu had already arrived and was persuading them. Land Marigold, on the other hand, had a nonchalant look on her face. This was despite the fact that the cause of all this might have been because of her words. Just as the clamor of the crowd was getting louder, a laughter came from afar. It showed how arrogant the person was and directly suppressed all the voices. Ha 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 ha. How dare a bunch of trash like you talk nonsense in front of the mad warrior? The owner of the voice revealed himself. It was a handsome young man. He had an orange afro on his head, and he was dressed in a non-mainstream style. However, after he appeared, no one dared to make a sound. The reason was simple. This person's surname was Lu and his name was Li. He had once wandered in the Sea of Stars alone for 7 years with a sword. After he returned, he became the #1 expert of the younger generation in Lu's family. This time, the Luca clan was fighting with other clansmen from other galaxies. The other branches had tried their best to find people to help, but only Lu Li's branch remained unmoved. This was because he did not need to find anyone for help. He was a top-notch extraordinaire himself. After Lu Li appeared, he did not look at Ji Yunan and Land Marigold. Instead, he shouted behind him, "Guan Shanxue, your master has been crippled. Why don't you, a dog, come out and bark?" Seemingly forced by his words, the other white-haired young man had no choice but to show himself. This Guan Shanxue had a blank look on his face as he explained seriously, "Lu Huayun and I are friends. I was invited by him to help. I'm not responsible for his safety." The two young men appeared one after the other. Ji Yunan's eyes scanned the two of them and revealed a playful expression. The two of them were at odds with each other, but their relationship seemed to be rather good. "But, what do you mean by mad warrior?" Ji Yunan interrupted their conversation and asked Lu Li directly. Lu Li withdrew his playful expression and said seriously, 2 days ago, the Central Star region released a new edition of the Stars ranking. You are ranked on it with the title Mad Warrior." As he spoke, he handed a piece of paper to Ji Yunan. Ji Yunan took the paper and realized that the material of the paper was special. It didn't look like an ordinary cloth. When he opened it, he saw the flickering stars and a list of names. At the very end of the paper, Ji Yunan's name was written. Ji Yunan, 19 years old. Member of the 9th Star Region's Red Carp. Origin unknown. Suspected to be a foreign visitor. Reason for entering the ranking: within a few months of the modern world, his strength advanced from the Xiantian realm to the Eternal Domain realm. The fastest breakthrough in the past century. Battle record: solo battle with the 7 Stars squad in Red Carp. The latter was annihilated. Title: because he used the blood-colored samurai sword during battle, he behaved like a mad demon. Hence, the title Mad Warrior. Innate ability: unknown. Special ability: unknown. Ability and ability are actually two unknown. It seems like there are times when Shanghai Pavilion doesn't live up to its name. It was unknown when Land Marigold came over and saw the words on the paper. She chuckled and said. Lu Li and Guan Shanxue didn't smile. Even a major force like Shanghai Pavilion couldn't find out about this person's background. There was only one possibility. Those who actually saw him in action were all dead. The two of them were willing to reveal themselves to meet this mad warrior because they wanted to interact with him and see if they could get more information. Ji Yunan seemed to fulfill their wish and said, "Can you contact the person who released the list? There is a piece of information that needs to be corrected." "Oh, what is it?" Lu Li's eyes lit up and quickly asked. Chapter 72. So, what exactly is the Stars ranking? Ji Yunan brought Lin Yunyun and sat opposite of Land Marigold. He picked up the coffee that the waiter served and asked. Land Marigold revealed a rare solemn expression. Don't underestimate the star's ranking. This is the signature of the Central Star Region's super organization, Shanghai Pavilion. Give me some more sugar, thank you. Ji Yunan said to the waiter. Bang! Land Marigold slammed the table in anger, causing the coffee cups on the table to shake. Lin Yunyun lowered her head and her shoulders were shaking, as though she was holding it in. After taking a few deep breaths, Land Marigold finally adjusted her emotions. Even though she had previously ridiculed them as a reincarnator, her reverence for an organization like Shanghai Pavilion was deep in her bones. It was a pity that her reverence wasn't something that Ji Yunan could experience. To the players, there were only two types of NPC factions, those that could be flattened, and those that could be flattened in the future. But after Land Marigold's introduction, Ji Yunan finally understood the meaning of the star's ranking. As the core strength of the Star Sea, Transcendence usually had a lot of privileges and would receive a lot of attention. The star's ranking was a ranking specially created for Transcendence. Because of its authority, it was very popular among martial artists. After all, in this world, fame and fortune were what people sought in life. The star's ranking represented the top half. In order to be on the star's ranking, apart from the hard condition of advancing into the Transcendence realm, it was also based on one's ability and achievements, and not solely on one's cultivation level. There were transcendents of all cultivation levels on the star's ranking. There were even quite a number of chaotic primes, but most of them had their own trump cards and weren't easy to deal with. Only those with outstanding abilities would be able to be on the star's ranking. The star's ranking only recorded the experts who were still alive and whose strength was at the transcendental stage. Including Ji Yunan, who was recently listed, there were only 461 names. These 461 people represented the most powerful transcendents in the entire astral realm. To be able to make it onto the star's ranking in a remote region like the 9th star region wasn't a small matter. It was no wonder that Lu Li and Guan Shanxue valued Ji Yunan so much. After parting ways with Land Marigold, Ji Yunan brought Lin Yunyun back to his room. Not long after, an unexpected visitor came to visit. Young Master Lu? What a rare guest. Ji Yunan looked at Lu Li, who had been waiting here for an unknown amount of time. Lu Li smiled and said, "Just call me Lu Li. I've long heard about Mr. Ji Yu from my younger brother. It's really better to meet him in person than to hear about him." Oh. Before Ji Yunan could think further, Lu Li took the initiative and said, "My younger brother is called Lu Wu. So it's him." Ji Yunan recalled that taciturn but abnormally sensitive youth. He might not know why he was in the red carp, but he was definitely not an ordinary person. He didn't expect this person to be more important than he had imagined. He then recalled that Land Marigold specially came over and asked him to take care of Lu Wu. It seemed like she expected him to be suspicious and did it on purpose. This woman really didn't want to let go of any opportunity and wanted to find trouble for him. Ji Yunan's mind was spinning, but he didn't show it on his face. "Young Master Lu is looking for me." Lu Li spoke with an expressionless face. "Mr. Ji Yu, do you know that there are people in the 66 Amaterasu who have laid out an inescapable net and are just waiting for you to step on it?" "So?" Ji Yunan raised his brows and had the same expressionless face. Ji Yunan's attitude made Lu Li seem to have understood something. His face revealed a cold intent. "It seems like Mr. Ji Yu is very confident of your strength. I would like to remind you that that person has invited someone from the star's ranking to make a move." Ji Yunan didn't say anything else and simply shook his head. He then led Lin Yunyun into the room and closed the door. He never liked to explain to others. Lu Li let out a sneer and similarly turned to leave. There was already someone waiting for him at the corner. It was actually Guan Shanxue who appeared earlier. What did he say? He didn't even ask who was going to deal with him. Lu Li's face revealed a disdainful expression, an arrogant lunatic. Hu Wei will let him know the price of arrogance. The incident on Starship didn't have much of an impact. Lu Huayun might have an extraordinary status in Lu's family, but he still couldn't be compared to someone like Lu Li. After Lu Li personally paid a visit to Ji Yunan, everyone understood Lu's family's attitude towards Ji Yunan. Even though their conversation wasn't pleasant. When the news of Ji Yunan ascending the stars ranking got out, his reputation was truly resounding. Half of the 9th star region had heard of him as the fastest breakthrough in 100 years. 2 days passed by quickly. Ji Yunan was able to leave Starship and step onto the famous 66 Amaterasu. If Red Carp was a typical modern city, then the city of 66 Amaterasu was more like a steel jungle. There aren't many residential areas in 66 Amaterasu. Hence, the city's utilization rate is very high. Land Marigold acted as a temporary tour guide and explained to Ji Yunan and Lu Huayun. Even the air is being used. Ji Yunan said softly as he looked at the various strangely shaped buildings in the air. That's right. Those are all residences. Land Marigold shrugged her shoulders and said, so you should understand that the ground level that you are staying in is very expensive. In this high martial arts world, it was rather dangerous to stay in the sky. Because you don't know, maybe one day 2 people will appear and break through the wall of your house. Ji Yunan was a distinguished guest of Lu's family, which was why he was able to stay in the extremely precious ground-level residences. Of course, Ji Yunan didn't really care about this. With his current physique, even if he was thrown down from 1,000 meters in the sky, he could still stand up. Is there any news on the information that I asked you to investigate? Ji Yunan asked. He was referring to the information regarding the word max that he had previously given to Land Marigold. We're still investigating. So far, we haven't found any valuable clues. Land Marigold said. Ji Yunan nodded. After all, he had just arrived at 66 Amaterasu not long ago. The people of Lu's family wouldn't be so fast in their actions. Asking the people of Lu's family to help him investigate was something that he had planned for a long time. He was different from those who had clues but insisted on investigating by themselves. This kind of mechanical and unskilled work was not something that a professional player would do. He wasn't afraid of anyone who dared to take his things. If there was such a person, he would just kill them and get his things back. Oh right. Land Marigold looked at Ji Yunan strangely and said, on the side of the immortal and demon world, Ji Yunan and Yang Xiaoxiao are fighting. Long before the 2 of them left the Red Carp, Ji Yunan had asked Land Marigold to arrange people to go to the immortal and demon world before they were reincarnated as their informants. Of course, Ji Yunan wasn't stupid enough to really hand over the immortal and demon world to care for one's family. At this time, when Ji Yunan heard this, he wasn't surprised at all. Instead, he laughed out loud. Good, let your people start spreading rumors. Just say that those outsiders from care for one's family want to destroy the immortal and demon world. Chapter 73. The situation in the immortal and demon world was actually under Ji Yunan's control. He was limited by his transcendent soul and could not monitor it personally, but he could find others to reincarnate over and collect information for him. Reincarnation was really an excellent investigative method, safe, efficient, and there was no fear of the collected information not being able to be transmitted. Since care for one's family knew about the immortal and demon world, they adopted the most correct method, which was to cooperate with the local forces and carry out their invasion and colonization plan. Although the power of the astral world was far greater than that of the immortal and demon world, reincarnators had to return regularly, so they had to support the local forces. And because of Ji Yunan's legacy, Blue Dragon Hall became the best choice. Originally, everything was going on in an orderly manner, even Land Marigold had given up on the idea of joining in, but she did not expect that there would suddenly be a change. Care for one's family had previously supported Blue Dragon Hall and continued to suppress other forces. Now that Blue Dragon Hall has fallen out with them, both sides are really like fire and water. As Land Marigold spoke, her expression became more and more strange, and she asked curiously, how did you do it? Ji Yunan and Yang Xiaoxiao don't seem like people who act impulsively. In her opinion, the cooperation between Yang Xiaoxiao and care for one's family was completely beneficial for both sides. Care for one's family would share the resources of the immortal and demon world, while Blue Dragon Hall would obtain power and support, and could truly control a part of the world and enjoy great power. Ji Yunan just smiled and did not say anything. Of course, he could not explain the reason. In terms of personal orientation, it was probably Ji Yunan's only weakness. On one hand, she could not suppress the desire in her heart, and on the other hand, she desperately wanted to hide it. So after the conflict broke out, she chose to fall out without saying anything. As for Yang Xiaoxiao, it was even simpler. I treat you as a sister, and you actually want to have sex with me? Ji Yunan was unwilling to explain further. Land Marigold left with her heart full of doubts. Lin Yunyun walked over and handed Ji Yunan a cup of coffee, and the latter added 3 bags of sugar. Did anything special happen when you were practicing martial arts recently? Ji Yunan asked the little lowly to sit down and asked with a faint smile. Lin Yunyun stared blankly at the 3 empty sugar bags and mumbled, I don't feel anything. The innate realm seems to be just like this. That's right, Lin Yunyun had successfully entered the innate realm in the past few days. But because her body's true qi was too abundant, there was no essential difference between innate true qi and acquired true qi. At most, she could use more true qi. Ji Yunan reached out and patted her arm, causing her to cry out in pain. The true qi in your body doesn't seem to be accumulating anymore. Ji Yunan said, the higher your realm, the better your control of true qi, the less pain you will feel. Lin Yunyun's eyes suddenly lit up when she heard this. Then in the future, can I never feel pain? Theoretically, yes. Ji Yunan nodded and then took out a bag of white powder. Now let's eat first. Lin Yunyun glared at him bitterly, then quickly snatched the powder, squatted in the corner and ate crazily. She still maintained her previous habit of using a rather inelegant posture every time she ate, even though she could slowly enjoy it now. Soon, the room was only left with Ji Yunan's not heavy breathing and the girl's weak moans after eating. 66 Amaterasu, in a simple independent house, a white-haired old man with a youthful face was sipping tea. His eyes fell on the distance where others couldn't see, and he sighed softly. In that case, that Mr. Gu doesn't have the intention to reconcile. The old man's voice was very calm, and not much emotion could be heard. Yes. Lu Li stood in front of the old man and said in a deep voice, Grandfather, should we help Hu Wei? This old man was Lu Li's grandfather, the true ruler of the Luca clan, Lu Yiming, who was also known as the Spirit Elder. Lu Yiming had been overseeing 66 Amaterasu for dozens of years, and he almost single-handedly created this planet of steel. It was evident that he had an iron fist. But at this moment, he gently waved his hand. After the stars ranking was released, Xu Yuanjun specially looked for me and said that this Ji Yunan isn't a good person. If Xiaowei wants to take revenge, my Lu family won't interfere. Lu Li frowned slightly. There were 2 ways to understand not a good person. One was that this person's personality wasn't easy to get along with, and the other was, his strength wasn't easy to deal with. He admitted that this person was able to ascend the stars ranking at such a young age, and he definitely wasn't someone easy to deal with. But this was still 66 Amaterasu. Back when his grandfather was expanding the territory, he was also a member of the stars ranking, and he had fallen before. To this day, there were at least 3 Eternal Domain realm experts hidden here. As compared to the Red Carp, which was the main star of the star region, 66 Amaterasu was closer to the front lines, and there were more experts coming and going. Grandfather, Xu Yuanjun hasn't made a move for so many years. Could it be that his strength has regressed, and he has underestimated his opponent? Lu Li frowned and said. Regressed? Lu Yiming couldn't help but laugh. You little rascal, when old Xu obtained the title, your father was still drinking milk. What did I say just now? Old Xu specially came to look for me. This old man who was laughing loudly emphasized. Specially, do you understand? He came personally. Personally? So what? Lu Li wasn't able to react for a moment, and he was shocked at the next moment. His grandfather said after the stars ranking was released. During these 2 days, there wasn't a second starship that took this star path. In other words, Xu Yuanjun relied on his own strength to directly travel to 66 Amaterasu. The youth couldn't help but take a deep breath. Is this the power of space? On the steel planet 66 Amaterasu, the most common thing was man-made buildings, and it was a city made of reinforced concrete. The rarest thing was undoubtedly the unmodified natural scenery. There was such a place in the vicinity of Lu's family's residence. This was a secluded valley, and the crisp chirping of birds echoed in the mountains, giving off an indescribable feeling of tranquility. A green-clothed man was walking in the valley, and his pace wasn't fast or slow. He seemed to be admiring the scenery along the way, but his eyes were always looking ahead. There was a waterfall in front of him, and it was a super large waterfall that had a height of 1,000 meters. The splashing water could even land in front of the man. That person has arrived. I wonder when will Xiao Owei come out of seclusion? The man looked at the waterfall for a moment and let out a helpless sigh. Before he could finish his sentence, he saw a mystical scene in front of the waterfall. The curtain of water that was flowing down slowly opened up, as though it was forcefully separated by some kind of force. Bit by bit, the water was blocked to both sides, revealing a figure behind the water. That figure was wearing a simple military uniform, and there were traces of fatigue in between his brows, but his eyes were bright and full of expression. If there was someone familiar here, they would definitely be able to recognize this person. It was Hu Wei who had disappeared for a long time. Chapter 74. In 66 Amaterasu, in a mausoleum behind an old residence, a group of black-clothed men surrounded a tombstone, led by a white-clothed young man. The young man was expressionless as he uttered, "Dig." The group of black-clothed men did not hesitate at all, and immediately began to dig. They would have hesitated at first, but they had done similar things countless times over the past few days, and had long become numb to it. After a short while, a coffin was placed in front of them. The young man waved his hand, and a pitch-black blade of light flew out, directly splitting open the coffin, revealing the skeleton inside. The young man dispersed the dust that pervaded the air, and searched the coffin for a while, then shook his head and said, "Let's go to the next place." Outside the mausoleum, there was already a scene of mountains of corpses and seas of blood, with corpses lying everywhere. When the white-clothed young man walked out, he completely ignored all of this. There was still a man on the ground who had not died yet, and he used the last of his strength to climb up, glaring fiercely at the young man. "Why? My family has no enmity with you. Why did you slaughter my kin, burn my..." Before he could finish speaking, a black light flashed, and the man's head had already fallen. The young man slowly melted the black sword in his hand, and did not even stop moving forward. Not letting the last hit affect one's movements, this was the advantage that professional players had over ordinary players. When the black-clothed man behind saw this scene, he sighed softly and said, "If you want to blame someone, blame it on your ancestor. There's someone called Maximum. Sir, the last 12 clues have all been explored today." The leader of the black-clothed men, or rather the Lu family who had changed their appearances, stood in front of Ji Yunan, and carefully reported. It was not that this leader was weak, but the methods that the person in front of them had displayed over the past few days were too cruel and ruthless, and even these people found it a little difficult to bear. The white-clothed young man was naturally Ji Yunan. He nodded, indicating for the leader to lead his men away, and then sat in the mansion that Lu family had prepared, feeling helpless. It had been 4 days since he arrived at 66 Amaterasu. After comparing the clues he collected with the information collected by Lu's family, he finally determined that there were 44 valuable clues. Ji Yunan had locked the name Max on ancient heroes, fierce beasts, and vicious birds. The 44 clues all revolved around such things. But in the end, Ji Yunan was wrong. Could it be a living person? Or a place name? Ji Yunan was most afraid of these two situations. There were too many variables in the former. If he was not a local resident, he would not have registered his name in the register. How was he supposed to start looking? As for the latter, information was too difficult to find. Many names had been submerged in the torrent of history, and no one knew of them now. "Uncle." Lin Yunyun had unknowingly walked to his side and said softly, "I received something today." Ji Yunan turned around in confusion and saw Lin Yunyun holding a small box in her hand. The box was pink, and it looked very girlish. Ji Yunan did not think too much about it. He opened the box and found a small piece of paper inside. There were some pink crystals wrapped in the paper. There was a small line of words on the paper: military stimulant drug, Maximum, in the quiet valley, Hu Wei, and a man walked side by side. The man's face was full of excitement. "Xiao Owei, you succeeded in advancing this time, and your strength has increased by leaps and bounds. You can definitely take revenge." Hu Wei shook her head lightly. Although my psychokinesis is special, it can at most compete with someone in the nuance realm. That person has already formed his domain. It's not easy to deal with him." The man was stunned. Although he also knew martial arts, his mind was not on it. This man named Tian Yuquan was only an acquired martial artist. Naturally, he did not know the difference between extraordinaires. Hu Wei did not say much and continued to walk forward. But soon, she stopped. At the entrance of the valley, there was an old man standing there. "Teacher." Hu Wei opened her mouth with some difficulty. Her originally resolute gaze was somewhat lowered. She knew she was determined to avenge her little brother. She had let her teacher down. Her foundation was not stable, and she leveled up early. She had cut off her path to break the world. She had failed her teacher's teachings. She was determined to fight Ji Yunan, and her teacher's family was in danger. After all, Ji Yunan had been invited by Land Marigold to help Lu's family. But the enemy had come to her home base. How could she let him go? Lu Yiming looked at the student he was so proud of. After a while, he sighed and said, "This battle is your destiny. I will not help either of you. Our relationship as teacher and student ends here. Take care of yourself." After saying that, Lu Yiming's body disappeared. He did not give Hu Wei a chance to speak again. Hu Wei was frozen as she watched her teacher leave. She could not come back to her senses for a while. Tian Yuquan was frozen. After a while, he said, "Old Lu, why is he suddenly so cruel?" Hu Wei's eyes focused again. She took a deep breath and said, "Teacher is reminding me. He does not think I can win. Maybe the enemy is so strong that he has to worry about it. He does not want to risk the entire Lu's family." Her words made Tian Yuquan speechless for a while. At that moment, another shadow appeared next to the two of them. The person was wearing a black bamboo hat. He had the face of a middle-aged man. He looked very sad. Tian Yuquan saw the man and quickly bowed. "Greetings, Mr. Yi. I am Yuquan." The middle-aged man nodded and had a smile in his eyes. However, his face was still sad. "So you are the young lad from the Tian's family. You were only this tall when I came to 66 Amaterasu." As Mr. Yi spoke, he gestured at his knees. Tian Yuquan looked embarrassed. He let out 2 dry coughs and didn't dare to say anything else. Hu Wei's expression turned even uglier. "Mr. Yi, even you are here to advise me to give up on my revenge?" "Yes." Mr. Yi nodded slowly. Ji Yunan is already on the stars ranking. He is titled as the Mad Warrior. He paused for a moment and felt that it was cruel to tell this news to Hu Wei. A 19-year-old titled warrior. Hu Wei had been in seclusion and had just heard this news. Her expression turned dark and she was speechless. "Even you aren't confident." Hu Wei looked at Mr. Yi. She didn't wish to hear an answer from him. She still couldn't believe that no matter how talented that Ji Yunan was, could he be a match for the man in front of her. He had progressed to the Eternal Domain realm 20 years ago and was titled as the Bitter Sword Saint 10 years ago. He had been dominating the Star Sea for dozens of years. How could he be incomparable to that fellow who had just debuted for a few months? She was disappointed when the Bitter Sword Saint, Yi Qinglan, ultimately shook his head. The Stars ranking doesn't have a ranking. Everyone on the Stars ranking is an outstanding talent. No one knows what kind of trump cards they have. Yi Qinglan said calmly, "I am not afraid of that Ji Yunan, but I am not 100% confident that I can make him stay." Yi Qinglan's follow-up explanation made Hu Wei feel more at ease. It wasn't that Mr. Yi thought that he wouldn't be a match for his opponent, but his goal this time was to kill someone, which made the difficulty much higher. It wasn't easy to kill a titled expert, but it was even more difficult to make him stay. "But you don't have to worry," he said to Hu Wei, "since I promised your father to help me once, I will do my best this time." Hu Wei could only say a few words of thanks and didn't say anything else. Soon enough, Yi Qinglan left. Xiao Wei. Tian Yuquan looked at her dazed expression and couldn't help but say, "Why not? I get my family to help and ruin this Ji Yunan's reputation." The Tian's family was a famous political family in the 66 Amaterasu. Tian Yuquan was most familiar with the methods of accumulating and destroying one's reputation. Hu Wei shook her head, but her eyes gradually turned resolute, as though she had made a decision. She walked out of the valley on her own. Chapter 75. At the Tian's family. Dad, you have to help me this time. Tian Yuquan stood in front of his father's desk with a stern expression, as though he was going to die if his father didn't agree. Tian Tianrong looked at his only son helplessly and didn't know what to say. How can I help? Is it something we can interfere in the battle between two stars rankers? Tian Tianrong slammed on the table and had an expression of exasperation. Back then, he didn't agree for the clan to leave the military and enter the political arena, causing the younger generation to be unwilling to learn martial arts. Why didn't they understand that strength was the one that spoke in this world? Tian Yuquan didn't even dare to raise his head after being reprimanded, but his mouth still said, "Dad, you are the capital's chairman, and you don't need us to fight. We just have to say a few words." Tian Tianrong was so angry that he laughed. Just a few words from me can make two stars rankers listen to me. Am I the chairman of the entire federation or something? Why don't they listen? Tian Yuquan spoke with justice. As long as Dad says it and allows Ji Yunan to have a fair fight with Mr. Yi, he will still have to give you some face, right? A fair fight. That's right. Mr. Yi said it himself. He isn't afraid of not being able to defeat his opponent, but he isn't confident that he can make him stay. Tian Yuquan repeated what he heard from Yi Qinglan today. Tian Tianrong's expression gradually calmed down as he considered the pros and cons of this matter. If he just invited both parties to a fight, even if it wasn't successful, there wouldn't be any losses. But if it was successful, a name suddenly popped up in Tian Tianrong's mind, Hu Wei. Perhaps, this was the opportunity for the Tian's family to return to the military. As for how to entice Ji Yunan to take the bait, it was obviously impossible to rely on words like his son. Tian Tianrong wasn't foolish enough to think that he could make a star's ranker give him face. He lowered his head and took out a note from the drawer. 2 words were written on it, maximum. All the information about the stimulant max is here. Land Marigold sat in the dim light, moved a large stack of documents, and said at the same time. Ji Yunan didn't say anything and continued to read. Land Marigold continued, Max, a stimulant used by the military to boost one's spirit. It also has the effect of dispersing chaotic internal energy. It was first contributed by the Tian's family to the military as the price for them to fully withdraw from the military and devote themselves to politics. Later, because the drug was too hallucinogenic, its use was abolished. Which Tian's family? Ji Yunan raised his eyebrows as if he had understood something. Land Marigold pointed at the table seriously. It's this Tian's family. On the table was an invitation letter. It was from the parliament speaker of 66 Amateresu's capital city, Tian Tianrong. He represented the bitter sword saint, Yi Qinglan, to invite Ji Yunan for a public duel. The prize was the method to produce the drug max. This is obviously a trap set up by someone. Land Marigold sat opposite Ji Yunan and spoke with a serious expression. Yi Qinglan and Hu Wei's father are good friends. How did the Tian's family know that you need this drug max? Even though Lu's family had been searching for max with great fanfare, even Ji Yunan had just found out that max might be referring to a drug. How did the Tian's family know about it in advance? This is an open scheme. Ji Yunan knocked on the table lightly and let out a faint smile. No matter who is the mastermind, if he knows, I will definitely go. Land Marigold couldn't help but roll her eyes and said, the bitter sword saint was at the Eternal Domain realm 20 years ago. How confident are you? Of course, 100%. Ji Yunan laughed and said, I am not going to fight to the death with him. I am just going to claim the prize. A grand announcement of the duel had unfolded with both parties tacitly agreeing to it. No one knew where the news first came from, and no one knew who the source was. But the news of the bitter sword saint, Yi Qinglan's return to Mother Planet, Tian Yi, and his duel with the newly advanced star's ranker, Ji Yunan, had already spread like wildfire. In just 2 days, almost the entire 66 Amaterasu knew what the star's ranker was, who the star's ranker was, who Ji Yunan and Yi Qinglan were, and they were going to duel. On the day of the duel, at the back of the duel arena, the bitter sword saint, Yi Qinglan, had been waiting for a long time. At a certain moment, he slowly opened his eyes, and a figure gradually appeared beside him. "You have taken the military's medicine." Yi Qinglan looked at the person beside him and spoke with an expressionless face. The person beside him was Hu Wei. But the current Hu Wei had snow-white hair that reached her waist, which was completely different from her previous short hair. "Half a day." Hu Wei's voice seemed to be trembling slightly. "I only have half a day. If you are unable to kill him, I will make my move." When she was speaking, Hu Wei's eyes were fixed on the other party. The bitter sword saint had always been a loner and had never teamed up with anyone. Would this time be an exception? Yi Qinglan remained silent for a long time and finally nodded gently before walking towards the duel arena alone. At the end of the passageway, the sunlight gradually shone on the middle-aged sword saint's body, followed by a tsunami of voices. The clamor and clamor couldn't affect his state of mind. This was the concentration that an eternal domain realm expert would have when facing a life-and-death battle. The duel arena was filled with spectators. Due to the government's vigorous publicity, countless societal celebrities and tyrannical martial artists had gathered here today, looking forward to the duel between the two experts. A reporter and commentator at the front was currently reporting with spittle flying everywhere. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Tianyi television station's frontline reporter. We are now at the capital's plaza, which is also the duel arena for the 2 stars rankers, Mr. Yi Qinglan and Mr. Ji Yunan. This duel between the two of them can be said to be the duel of the century that is rarely seen in 100 years. The government has even sponsored the manufacturing method of the secret medicine Max as a wager for both sides. The duel is about to begin. We can see that the Sword Dao Master, Mr. Yi Qinglan, is already in position. He is indeed worthy of being a master of the generation. Just his posture alone is enough to give people immense pressure. In the VIP seats, Tianrong was sitting in the middle with a calm expression. No one could tell what he was thinking. His only son, Tian Yuquan, was standing behind him. His face was obviously revealing excitement, and he couldn't help but look in a certain direction. Mr. Yi came out from that direction, so Xiaowei must be there too. "Xiaowei, did you see that? I can help you with that too. Speaker Tian, you truly have a good method." Lu Li sat beside Tianrong and revealed a rather profound smile. He spoke in a low voice. For such a scene, the investment must not be small, right? He was here to represent Lu's family. If Lu Yiming didn't show up, Lu Li was qualified to represent Lu's family's attitude. Tianrong's expression didn't change. He smiled faintly and waved his hand. "I don't deserve it. I heard that this Mr. Gu's temper isn't that good. I am just trying to protect myself." Lu Li grunted lightly and didn't say anything else. This Tianrong was indeed smart, to make such a big scene. Even if Ji Yunan wasn't satisfied with this duel, he couldn't possibly show it in public, right? This was the 66 Amaterasu and not Ji Yunan's territory. At the same time, the commentator's voice echoed again. "Ladies and gentlemen, the one walking towards us is the other stars list expert of the duel. He is from the red carp, Mr. Ji Yunan. No wonder he is a young hero. Mr. Gu's majestic strides have already reached the duel stage." "Hey!" Mr. Ji Yu made a turn. "Is he trying to greet Master Yi first?" Chapter 76. The capital square was the venue chosen by the government for the duel between Ji Yunan and Tianrong. It was often used for public performances. The whole place was like a basin, surrounded by audience seats that were constantly rising. Such an arrangement allowed everyone in the audience to see the scene below clearly. The VIP seats were placed at the lower end of the audience seats. It was an excellent position, but it was also the position closest to the square. What was on the VIP seats? There were Tianrong and other VIPs, as well as the commentator, and the prize. In order to show their sincerity, the Tian's family had already prepared the prize. Now it was placed in the center of the VIP seats, which was also a display for all the audience to see. At this time, Ji Yunan was standing in front of the prize. "Max. So that's what it means." When Ji Yunan saw the so-called prize, he couldn't help but smile. It was a beautifully carved golden eagle. Its whole body was bright gold, and only its left eye was blood red. At first glance, it was a bit strange. Ji Yunan clearly saw that on the back of this little eagle, there was clearly a line of small words engraved. It was written in some kind of ancient language. Although he didn't understand it, Ji Yunan could guess what it was. It was Max, and its eyes were Max's eyes. Mr. Ji Yu, please return to the field immediately. The duel is about to begin. A tall man walked over and said stiffly. This man wore a police uniform, and as he watched Ji Yunan's actions, he said in a low voice, "If you can win the duel, the prize will naturally be yours. Could it be that you want to disregard the dignity of a martial artist?" Ji Yunan stretched out one hand, which had already fallen on the golden eagle Max, while the other hand gently waved. Slap. A slap landed on the man's face, and the terrifying force twisted his neck instantly. His whole head rotated twice in a row, and then slowly fell down. Ji Yunan didn't even look at him. He calmly put away the golden eagle. When his finger brushed over the left eye of the golden eagle, an inexplicable throbbing seemed to come from it, but it was instantly crushed by the body of the evil god. Seems like something ran out. Ji Yunan looked down in confusion. Unfortunately, it's too weak. The fall of the police uniform seemed to make the surrounding people speechless. Lu Li's expression was a bit ugly, and Tian Tianrong even looked a bit panicked. What made him even more panicked was that his son actually spoke at this time. Ji Yunan, you dare to kill people in public? Do you have any respect for the Federation law? Tian Tianrong said with a sigh. He felt as if he was going to explode out. The speaker's son was still trying to restrict Ji Yunan with the rules. Tianrong said. Tian God Ji Yunan and Shen and Nan Tianrong. Is the incident not over yet? He touched his chin and looked at Tian Yuquan in front of him. Is it because an NPC participated in the fight, so the incident is not over yet? Seeing that Ji Yunan didn't reply, Tian Yuquan calmed down. No matter how arrogant he was, he didn't dare to be presumptuous in front of so many people. Put down the things and turn yourself in at the police station with me. You can still, clang. Before Tian Yuquan could finish, he felt a gust of cold wind in front of him. Then, he heard the sound of metal colliding, which hurt his eardrums. When he looked up again, he saw that Yi Qinglan was standing in front of him with a small black sword under his feet. Mr. Ji Yu, he has no enmity with you. Don't you think it's ungentlemanly of you to kill him just because of a quarrel? Yi Qinglan said calmly, still looking distressed. Only now did Tian Yuquan realize what had happened, and a trace of cold sweat seeped out from his back as he pointed at Ji Yunan while trembling. You're a homicidal maniac, be careful. Yi Qinglan shouted. Before he could do anything, a black sword pierced through Tian Yuechuan's back and pierced his heart. Yi Qinglan was a swordsman. He wasn't good at protecting people. So, when his reputation couldn't scare the other party, Tian Yuquan would definitely die. Son. A cry of grief came from afar. Tian Tianrong hadn't recovered from the shock. He knelt on the ground, his face full of grief and anger. Ji Yunan. The chairman spat out Ji Yunan's name from his clenched teeth. You go against the law and treat human life like grass. Before he could finish his sentence, Ji Yunan's sword had arrived. Yi Qinglan's expression changed. He knew that he wouldn't be able to rescue Tian Yuquan. He might as well thrust his sword at Ji Yunan's waist. He was planning to besiege Tian Yuquan to rescue Tian Yuquan. He believed that even if Tian Yuquan was a stars ranking expert, he wouldn't be able to ignore it. Yi Qinglan's sword pierced Ji Yunan without any obstruction. But this bitter sword saint immediately felt a repulsive force coming from Tian Yuechuan's body. His sword was actually unable to penetrate any deeper. Tian Tianrong's voice stopped abruptly. Ji Yunan paid the price of getting stabbed and forcefully pierced his throat, taking his life. Everything happened too quickly. The VIP seats and the surrounding audience only reacted at this moment. There was an uproar and the crowd was in an uproar. The death of the Tian family's father and son, and Ji Yunan's action of disregarding the duel and taking the prize had completely infuriated the crowd. Chairman Tian is dead. How is this possible? Thug. This is a thug. The Red Carp's men actually came to our 66 Amaterasu to kill people. This is too much. Sword Saint Yi, you must teach this bastard a lesson. The crowd's clamor didn't affect Yi Qinglan. He had a grave expression and thrust his sword at Ji Yunan's chest again. This time, the speed was faster than before. But this time, Ji Yunan suddenly turned around. A blood-colored long saber appeared in his hand, and he slashed down. Yi Qinglan, who was alarmed, immediately retreated. He couldn't be bothered to attack anymore. At the same time, he raised his hand and placed his sword horizontally, trying to block Ji Yunan's attack. Something that he didn't expect happened. The blood-colored long saber slashed on the long sword. It didn't even pause for a moment. It directly cut through the sword and fell straight down. Yi Qinglan couldn't dodge in time. He could only move sideways. The blood-colored saber instantly cut off his left arm. At the same time, under the robe that others couldn't see, there was another wound on Ji Yunan's left shoulder. But it quickly began to heal. The scene at the VIP seats was being played by the projection crystal. It was projected on the big screen for all the audience to see. Therefore, they were all speechless. Bitter Sword Saint Yi Qinglan actually had his long sword and left hand cut off in one move. Even Lu Li, who was at the side, was dumbfounded. He knew that Ji Yunan was strong, but he didn't think he would be this strong, right? Chapter 77. Lu Li was Lu's family's top prodigy. He himself was a transcendent in the nuance realm, so his judgment was far better than that of ordinary people. After the initial shock, he quickly realized what the problem was. That saber. Lu Li stared at Ji Yunan's blood-red saber, unable to calm down for a long time. If his guess was correct, the saber's sharpness had reached an unimaginable level. Yi Qinglan's sword, regardless of its material, had been nurtured by his sword heart for decades. It was already a famous sword in the world. However, such a sword had been cut in half. This was what Yi Qinglan had not expected, and what had caused his arm to be cut off. He looked at Yi Qinglan's expression. His eyes were filled with confusion, shock, and indignation. It was as if he could empathize with Yi Qinglan. The great bitter sword saint had not lost to his opponent, but to a saber. Thinking of this, Lu Li seemed to have an evil fire in his heart. He couldn't help but blurt out, "Ji Yunan, you won by relying on your weapon. What kind of hero are you?" As soon as he said that, Lu Li saw Ji Yunan turn around and smile cruelly at him. The next moment, Ji Yunan's figure appeared in front of him, and he swung his saber down. So fast. That was the thought in Lu Li's mind. His body was already madly activating his inner breath and his transcendent power. He knew all too well that he would not be able to withstand such a strike. Just as the blood-red saber was about to land on him, Lu Li's body trembled slightly. He turned into a piece of dead wood, and his body appeared next to him. At the transcendent stage, especially after the nuance realm, most martial artists would have all sorts of strange powers, as well as some strange life-saving techniques. Wood substitution technique? Ji Yunan's vision was very high. Before Lu Li could be complacent, he had already revealed his background. The corner of Lu Li's mouth twitched. Before he could speak, a figure slowly appeared behind Ji Yunan. The appearance of this figure was too inexplicable. Even Ji Yunan did not notice it. It was like a ghost, waiting for Ji Yunan to finish his saber strike and appear when his mind was at its most relaxed. Die. A deep and cold roar sounded. Ji Yunan felt a chill on the back of his neck as a heavy blow landed on him. This figure was none other than Hu Wei. At this moment, not only was her hair snow white, even her skin was a strange white. She looked like a snow demon from a ghost story. She hit Ji Yunan with a ball of psychic energy that was condensed to the extreme and filled with the power of frost. Ji Yunan was sent flying and crashed into the wall at the side. He only stopped after crashing through 3 walls. Lu Li leaned to the side, still looking fearful. He looked at Hu Wei with a strange gaze. He knew what Hu Wei had taken. It was a forbidden drug in the military. It was only effective on extraordinaires and could inject highly compressed energy into the user. However, the side effects of this drug were very serious, and the process of taking it was extremely painful. He did not expect this woman to go to this extent for her brother. However, if Ji Yunan was hit head-on, and it was a vital point like his neck, he probably would not have a chance to survive. To put it bluntly, that drug was a highly compressed energy ball. It was equivalent to the inner breath of 10 extraordinaires. If it hit a person directly, no one would be able to withstand it. Yi Qinglan had just stopped the bleeding from his wound. Holding his broken sword, he slowly walked to Hu Wei and sighed. After this attack, you only have 5 years left to live at most. Is it worth it? Of course, it's worth it. Hu Wei trembled a little, but her eyes were still firm. He dared to kill my brother, so I must kill him, well said. A slightly strange voice came from the ruins in front of them. If you dare to hurt me, I will kill all your relatives, friends, and teachers. Ji Yunan's figure slowly stood up from the ruins. There was a big hole in his throat. From the perspective of Hu Wei and the others, they could see the blood vessels that were still squirming around the wound and the tissue that was healing quickly. Ji Yunan's strange voice was caused by the self-repair of his vocal cords. What kind of monster is this? The projection device had already been broken by Ji Yunan. Some of the audience were in a hurry to leave, for fear that they would encounter an unexpected disaster. Some couldn't hold back their curiosity and tried to surround the VIP seats. Ji Yunan touched his itchy throat with his hand, and a grim smile appeared on his face. Since coming to this world, this was the first time he was really injured. Before this, he was either prepared for it, or he caused the injury himself. And in any case, it was far less serious than this time. If it wasn't for the divine skill blunting, it was hard to say whether he could have survived. Ji Yunan, who had brushed shoulders with death several times, didn't say another word. His figure instantly moved, and the blood knife slashed straight at Hu Wei. Go! Yi Qinglan shouted, and took a step forward. He actually took the initiative to meet him. He waved the sword in his hand lightly. The majestic sword essence was still sharp, as if it hadn't been broken in two. And there was a faint light flashing under his feet, as if something was slowly spreading. This bitter sword saint finally used his core technique, his bitter sword domain: birth, old age, sickness, and death, all kinds of suffering. Yi Qinglan's eyes were calm, and he said softly, "There are 39,000 sword essences in my domain, and each one is taken from the suffering of a person learning the sword. If you can't understand the bitter sword, you will never be able to leave." Halfway through his sentence, he couldn't continue any further. Because as Ji Yunan walked step by step, countless sword essences slashed at his body with each step, but they couldn't stop his footsteps. 39,000 swords, each sword stronger than the one before, and each sword more difficult to comprehend. Yi Qinglan's bitter sword domain was originally the best technique to trap the enemy, but who knew? Ji Yunan actually withstood it. After walking out of the bitter sword domain, Ji Yunan's body was covered in sword wounds. Even his eyebrows had been shaved off. But ever since he walked out of the domain, with every step he took, the wounds on his body healed a little. When he walked in front of Yi Qinglan, some of the sword wounds had even started to scab. "Why aren't you talking?" Ji Yunan smiled at Yi Qinglan. "If you don't want to talk, then go on your way." Bang! He pressed his palm on the top of Yi Qinglan's head, and directly pressed the latter's head into his body. Then, he turned to look at Hu Wei. Hu Wei had the appearance of a snow lady, and she used the last of her strength to unleash a psychic storm towards Ji Yunan. But even the defense of the sage robe couldn't be broken. To Ji Yunan, it was like a light breeze. Seeing this, Hu Wei didn't resist. She just smiled coldly at Ji Yunan. "If you want to kill me, just do it. If you want me to beg for mercy, let me tell you, you can't." Fat. Chapter 78. Even at the moment of her death, Hu Wei still had a look of disbelief on her face. Perhaps she still wanted to provoke Ji Yunan and then find a chance to fight back. Unfortunately, she didn't have that chance. Ji Yunan never thought that there was any meaning in torturing someone to death. Since they were going to die anyway, killing their entire family was more effective than torturing them to death. After killing Yi Qinglan and Hu Wei, Ji Yunan turned his attention to Lu Li. This young Master Lu was smart and instantly used 3 substitution techniques to teleport 500 meters away. In an instant, he couldn't even be seen. The corner of Ji Yunan's mouth curled up. He was too lazy to care about him. His current thoughts were on one hand, the series of events, and on the other hand, how to fulfill his promise. Ji Yunan walked down the VIP seats step by step. He held the blood-stained golden eagle in his hand. His left eye seemed to be even redder, which made him look even more devilish. I'll go to Lu's family first. If nothing goes wrong, the mastermind behind this should show up soon. Ji Yunan thought for a while and decided on his next move. There was still a group of spectators below the VIP seats. Now that he appeared, there was actually someone who was not afraid of death shouting. Ji Yunan, you killed Speaker Tian. You'll die a horrible death. There was an obvious accent in the voice, as if it came from a villager. It was probably a loyal supporter of Tian Tianrong. Ji Yunan turned around and saw that the crowd was so dense that he couldn't find the person who spoke. This was the wisdom of ordinary people. After all, the law didn't punish the masses. However, the corner of Ji Yunan's mouth curled up into a cold smile. The shadow under his feet suddenly spread out and turned into a huge palm. It directly fell in that direction. Bang! The palm instantly smashed dozens of people into meat paste. The person who spoke was mistaken about one thing. Ji Yunan didn't need to determine who spoke at all. He could kill them all. When Ji Yunan came to Lu's family again, the evil god temple had already given him a response. Completed mission, seize Max's eye. Total sin points, 10. Another 10 points were obtained. Ji Yunan's sin points had accumulated to 130 points. The new mission hadn't appeared yet. It would probably only be triggered when Max's eye came in handy. Ji Yunan's footsteps were fast, but the news of the duel spread faster than him. When he arrived at Lu's family, Lu Xinyu had already come out to greet him. This gentle woman, who seemed to be able to face anything calmly, had a rare stiff expression on her face at this moment. After welcoming Ji Yunan in, she barely chatted with him for a while and then let Ji Yunan enter the inner hall by himself. The two elders are already waiting for you. Two. Ji Yunan raised his eyebrows and smiled. When Ji Yunan walked into the inner hall, he saw two people sitting in front of him. There were 3 cups of tea on the table, and they were still steaming. It was obvious that they had just been poured. Among the 2 people, one was the head of Lu's family, Lu Yiming, who was known as the spiritual elder. The other person was someone who shouldn't be here. Xu Yuanjun. Lu Yiming told Lu Li many things, except for one thing. Not only did Xu Yuanjun come to 66 Amaterasu, but he hadn't left. So you 2 old men are in cahoots. Ji Yunan smiled and shook his head. He sat opposite them. No wonder you sent me that note. Ji Yunan's body still had a strong smell of blood, but the 2 old men didn't seem to mind. They just smiled and said nothing. After a while, it was Lu Yiming who spoke first. I hope Mr. Ji Yu will be satisfied with this gift. Ji Yunan looked at the 2 of them sitting together and finally understood the ins and outs of the entire matter. He wanted to find the 2 words Max through Lu's family, so Lu Yiming naturally knew about it. And the news about Lin Yunyun was most likely brought by Xu Yuanjun. After Red Carp destroyed the 7 Stars squad, Ji Yunan stayed in Red Carp for a long time. There were many people who studied and investigated him. It wasn't difficult to investigate from Ji Yunan to Lin Yunyun, and then to find out Lin Yunyun's previous hobbies. After all, she had been addicted to stimulants a long time ago, so there were always traces to follow. With the combination of these 2 aspects, and Lu Yiming's experience with the Tian's family, it wasn't strange that he thought of the drug maximum as the saying goes, the onlooker sees more clearly. Mr. Ji Yu is involved, so he can't think of the real Max, Xu Yuanjun also said at this time. This time, Ji Yunan nodded slightly, agreeing with the other party's view. He had been thinking from a conventional point of view, but he didn't think that Lin Yunyun was the key to the mission. The specific meaning of Max still fell on her. Therefore, he looked for the names of people and places related to Max, but he still found nothing. On the contrary, these 2 old men only had a few pieces of information at hand, so they could figure it out after a little connection. Ji Yunan looked at Lu Yiming again and said, Old Lu is also a cruel person. A good disciple was sent to my sword just like that. Since the people who set up the plot were these two old men, they were naturally the ones who caused the two sides to fight. Lu Yiming shook his head helplessly and said very frankly, "I've already set up the stage for her. In the end, her skills are not as good as others, so there's nothing that the old man can do." Ji Yunan looked at the two of them with a little amusement. These two old men had completely different personalities. Xu Yuanjun was worthy of the 4 words scheming and farsighted, while Lu Yiming, who had the title of Old Man of the Heart, was supposed to be shrewd and sophisticated, but instead, he was like an old child. However, no matter how old a child he was, he didn't miss out on the things that needed to be calculated. The two of them spent a lot of effort to set up such a plot, so that no matter which side won this matter, they would still be helping. Now that it was Ji Yunan who killed Hu Wei and Lu Yiming, even though the matter was provoked by the two old men, they did indeed deliver what he wanted to him, so of course they were helping. Even the idea of a duel was proposed by someone from the Tian's family, and had nothing to do with these two old men. On the other hand, if Ji Yunan died at the hands of Hu Wei, then the two old men would naturally help to restrict Ji Yunan and make him agree to the duel, which would naturally be a great help. In short, no matter what the result was, they would be standing on the side of the winner. There was always a reason why a 1,000-year-old family could stand tall and not fall. No matter what, I owe you for this matter this time. If there's anything in the future, feel free to ask. Ji Yunan drank the tea in his cup in one gulp and stood up. The two old men hurriedly stood up as well. They had been busy for so long, just waiting for this sentence from Ji Yunan. From their point of view, Ji Yunan was the kind of person who was loyal, capable, and had a big temper. This kind of person usually placed the most importance on promises. Of course, they wouldn't understand that the promises that players made to NPCs were basically like farts. It wasn't a big deal for players to go back on their word after making a promise. Chapter 79. At noon, the scorching sun hung high in the sky. In a manor on the outskirts of the capital city of 66 Amaterasu, a group of black-clothed men were swarming into the manor. They killed anyone they saw and burned down every house they saw. From the signboard at the entrance, one could vaguely make out the word "Yi." I say, why are they dressed in black in broad daylight? Ji Yunan stood outside the manor and asked Lu Zhanyu, who was beside him, in confusion. Land Marigold's face was a little dark as she replied, "Shouldn't you be the one asking that? Who would come here to exterminate an entire family in the middle of the day? So what if it's in the middle of the day?" Ji Yunan shrugged. When it comes to exterminating an entire family, of course they have to make sure that not a single chicken is spared. What if they escape at night? As he spoke, a young man was running out of the manor in a panic. There were a few black-clothed men chasing after him. When the young man saw that Ji Yunan and his companion were not dressed in black, he did not care and hurriedly shouted, "Sir! Save me, sir!" Ji Yunan waved his hand and gestured for the people behind him to go back. He then waved at the young man and said, "You, come here." When the young man turned around, he happened to see the black-clothed men bowing and leaving. He panicked even more, but he did not dare to pretend that he did not hear them. He could only bite the bullet and walk over. "Sir, do you have any instructions?" Before he could finish his sentence, Ji Yunan took out a golden eagle out of nowhere. He wiped his right hand on the blood-red pupil and a few pink crystals appeared. He stuffed them into the young man's mouth. The young man who was forced to swallow the pink crystals quickly became dazed. He swayed on the spot and then sat on the ground. Following that, he ran for a while and punched at the ancient tree. Then, he simply rushed back to the manor. In the end, he was beheaded by a passing black-clothed man. As expected, it has strong hallucinogenic properties. Ji Yunan nodded lightly. He had not fed something like Max to Lin Yunyun before. In the end, it was still a little strange. He planned to first do some small experiments to study the pattern. Land Marigold looked at the golden eagle in Ji Yunan's hand and asked curiously, "I heard that Max is made from fresh blood. Is that true? There's such a thing." Ji Yunan looked down at the golden eagle. Thinking about it, it wasn't impossible. He found that crystals were forming in the left eye of the golden eagle. It was after the golden eagle had absorbed enough blood, and this bloody eye could easily make people think of blood. Yeah. I also heard from some elders that Max was later banned, not only because of the side effects of the drug, but also because the production method was too cruel. Ji Nan frowned slightly, feeling a little puzzled. Using fresh blood as raw material was not cruel at all. Not to mention that it was not a big deal for ordinary people to bleed a little. Moreover, wasn't there also the blood of beasts? This Max's I might have other uses that he didn't know. The two of them stood for a while, and the shouting in the manor gradually subsided. A man in black walked quickly and reported to the two of them. There are a total of 352 people in the Yi Manor. Currently, except for a few servants who went out to buy, the rest have all been killed. Sir, please instruct us. Ji Nan nodded. The few fish that escaped the net must also be found and killed. We can't let the whole family die on the road to hell. Yes. Ji Nan and Land Marigold were now in the manor of Yi Qinglan's family. Since the previous battle, Ji Nan was angry that he was injured by Hu Wei, and he also took his anger out on Yi Qinglan, so he simply ran over to search and destroy the family. Well, the key reason was that Hu Wei had no other family members. She only had a younger brother since she was young, which was why she hated Ji Nan so much after Hu Daobin died. As for her friends, most of them were in the Red Carp. Her only teacher was Lu Yiming, and he had already severed all ties with her. Ji Nan had no choice but to vent his anger on the Yi clan. Seeing that the matter was almost settled, Land Marigold spoke again. I mentioned previously that I will help you find a small reincarnation organization to join. I have already contacted them, and they intend to send someone over to talk to you face to face. This wasn't considered strange. After all, Ji Nan was already a member of the Stars ranking and had a reputation in the entire Star domain. Be it out of respect or for the safety of their own organization, it was only right for them to come over. Oh. Ji Nan looked at her strangely. I thought you would take this opportunity to join. I am different from you. Land Marigold rolled her eyes and said, I reincarnated to seek resources and also to obtain some personal goods. Only a large organization like the Star Domain Gate is suitable for me. Ji Nan thought about it and it was indeed as she said. If he wasn't able to accept instance dungeon missions, he probably wouldn't have much interest in the reincarnation organization. After all, to an individual, as long as he completed the missions and obtained the rewards, he wouldn't have any intention to worry about the organization. When will they arrive? I am not sure yet. They are also coming from the 6-star region, and the time of the Star Domain jump is uncertain. Land Marigold shrugged her shoulders. Ji Nan then recalled that the Star Domain had something called the Star Domain jump. The Star Domain's 9 major star domains weren't artificially divided, and it wasn't a concept of administrative regions either. It was a true domain. Between domains, one had to use the method of space jump, and it was impossible to directly travel between domains. During the process of space jump, the time would be within a rough range, and it was hard to determine the exact time. For example, the other branch of Lu's family, which was coming to the 66 Amaterasu for war, was also from the 6-star region. Hence, the time of arrival was also uncertain, and it was only known that it would be within the next 2 weeks. For the time being, this matter could only wait, and Ji Nan wasn't in a hurry. He hadn't finished his chain of events yet. The next step was to test the use of Max, and try to let Lin Yunyun come into contact with Max to see if she could trigger the next evil event. Right, how's the situation in the immortal demon world? Ji Nan suddenly thought of this matter. Currently, the flow of time in the immortal demon world was 10 times faster than in the Star Domain. Almost every few days here, there would be a huge change. The last report I received was that the war has already begun. Land Marigold said casually. As you wish, we sent a lot of technology and equipment to Blue Dragon Hall. Now, at least they have the ability to fight back. That's good. Ji Nan's eyes were filled with anticipation. After 20 years of evolution in the immortal demon world, even though there were pitifully few transcendents, the foundation was still there. Moreover, they had the advantage in numbers. As long as care for one's family couldn't find suitable natives to support them, they might be able to slowly turn the situation around. Now that they had Land Marigold to help make up for the difference in hardware, at least they wouldn't be beaten to the ground at the start of the war. When Land Marigold saw Ji Yunan's expression, she couldn't help but ask curiously, "You've tried so hard to start a war. What are you trying to do?" She really didn't understand. Whether Ji Yunan wanted resources or to vent his anger, it didn't seem like he should have used this kind of method. Of course, she didn't know that Ji Yunan was cultivating that world as a spare tire for his divine kingdom. Of course, he was thinking of ways to improve the power level of the people there. No matter how powerful a master is, he can't cultivate more powerful people than war. Ji Yunan smiled at her. Chapter 80. A grand duel had ended in a strange way. Thanks to Tian Tianrong's vigorous publicity, Ji Yunan's infamy had gone up another level. His grudge with Hu Wei was just a small matter. Instead, it was Yi Qinglan's death and the extermination of the entire Yi clan that shocked many people. Compared to the battle record of killing the Bitter Sword Saint, his previous feat of eliminating the Seven Stars Squad was negligible. He was a Stars ranker, a true veteran Eternal Domain Realm, and a master swordsman. The Seven Stars Squad was also known as an elite squad that specialized in killing Eternal Domain Realm experts, but they were dealing with star beasts. How could their foresight and methods be compared to the human race? In the endless void, a starship was traveling slowly. It was in a very strange state. From the outside, it seemed to be fast and slow at times. Sometimes, even the body of the ship would be blurred. If there was someone knowledgeable here, they would definitely understand that this starship was in the midst of a starfield jump. Inside the starship, an elder was holding a stack of information and reading it attentively. The first sentence of the information was impressively written. The target killed the Bitter Sword Saint, Yi Qinglan, at 66 Amaterasu. A young lady at the side whispered, "Elder, this Ji Yunan is too vicious and merciless. If we accept him into the organization and he has the intention to seize power, the consequences will be unimaginable." As soon as she finished speaking, the man at the side spoke, "Wei Ru, don't be an alarmist. It is that Yi Qinglan who openly challenged Mr. Ji Yu. Is he going to stand there and let him kill him?" Wei Ru immediately retorted, "Since it is a duel, he naturally has to stop. Why does he want to kill him?" The man sneered in disdain and didn't even bother to speak. He turned to look at the elder. "Elder Qin, you make the decision." The man smiled. "If you want to go home, it's not too late to ask the captain to turn around. But I have to remind you, Elder, that person's pigeon is not to be let off easily." Wei Ru's face changed slightly when she heard the man's last sentence. She said in a deep voice, "Li Lao, are you saying that our white mist is afraid of him alone?" Li Lao shrugged and didn't say anything, but his meaning was clear. Elder Qin waved his hand and said, "All right. No matter how things develop, since I've promised that person, I have to at least meet him." Wei Ru saw that she couldn't influence the elder's decision, so she could only angrily stomp her feet and turn around to leave. Seeing this, Elder Qin could only shake his head slightly. "I heard that old Wei and Yi Qinglan are close friends. It seems that the rumors are true. Lao, be prepared. Don't let her do anything out of line." "Yes, Elder." Li Lao bowed in response, but there was a strange smile in his eyes. Putting aside the conversation in the endless void, Ji Yunan was still doing his own things on 66 Amaterasu. He spent a few days and finally studied the nature of Maximum. This golden eagle was indeed called Maximum. Its origin was hard to verify, but the text on its body was at least 3,000 years old. And the ability of Max's eye to produce drugs didn't seem that simple. The blood of many races could produce drugs that would make people excited, but the effects were specific. Human blood was extremely effective on humans, but pig blood was much less effective when used on humans, and vice versa. In addition, Max's eye seemed to be a bottomless pit. Even after pouring the blood of hundreds of people, it didn't show any signs of being full. Don't ask Ji Yunan how he knew. But these were all minor details. What really concerned Ji Yunan was the effect of the drug Maximum. Walking slowly into the laboratory that was completely white, Ji Yunan came to a one-way glass. Lin Yunyun was isolated inside. Lin Yunyun wasn't in a good state at the moment. Her hands and feet were hung with heavy chains, and her hair was disheveled. The isolation room seemed very messy. "How's the situation today?" Ji Yunan asked. According to the plan, The target has ingested 5 units of maximum. There are no abnormalities for the time being. A researcher walked to Ji Yunan and reported softly. Ji Yunan nodded and said, "Continue to observe." Yes. Ji Yunan took one last look at Lin Yunyun, then turned around and left. The isolation glass couldn't block his shadow power, so he could easily see Lin Yunyun's current state. She will reach the critical point of becoming a transcendent in about 10 days. Ji Yunan made an accurate judgment. Ever since he fed Max to Lin Yunyun, the situation had become difficult to deal with. The effects of Max had long been tested. The positive effect was to make people excited and resolve some of the chaotic internal energy, but the side effect was that it had a strong hallucinogenic effect. The two effects on Lin Yunyun were like heaven and earth. Lin Yunyun's internal energy was extremely complicated, and it was all accumulated in her body. She could only rely on herself to resolve it bit by bit. But the appearance of Max became an opportunity. Taking Max could actually help her resolve her internal energy and improve her cultivation in disguise. Max's hallucinogenic effect seemed to be especially effective on Lin Yunyun. Every time she took Max, her mind would be in a chaotic state. Sometimes, she would fall asleep immediately, and sometimes she would run out and kill. Because of this, Ji Yunan had to lock her up like an animal and feed her a certain amount of Max every day. He had a premonition that the next step would be for Lin Yunyun to make a breakthrough in her cultivation. 2 days later, Lu's family came to invite Ji Yunan because the Lu's family branch in the 6-star region had finally arrived. When Ji Yunan arrived, Lu Yiming and Shu Yuanjun were already there, as well as Guan Shanxue from the Yin-Yang Tower, whom Ji Yunan had met before. Apart from these three, there was also a man and a woman that Ji Yunan had never seen before. The man had blue hair and a cold expression. He didn't seem to be talkative. The woman, on the other hand, was more lively. When she saw Ji Yunan, she looked at him curiously. When Ji Yunan saw the two, he frowned slightly. This was because the way they dressed was very special. They both wore azure robes with a mysterious flower-shaped pattern embroidered on their chests. I am afraid that there are only a few people present who can recognize this pattern, even Lu Yiming and Shu Yuanjun. When Lu Yiming saw Ji Yunan, he took the initiative to introduce him. Guan Shanxue from the Yin-Yang Tower. You must already know Ji Yunan. Lu Yiming pointed to the 3 people next to him. These two are Lan Ta and his sister, Lan Sai. Then, he introduced Ji Yunan, and they nodded to each other in greeting. They were acquainted. During this process, Ji Yunan's eyes seemed to inadvertently sweep over them, confirming the pattern on their chests. As expected. Chapter 81. When Ji Yunan first returned to the Langya world, he had met a blood god's messenger. After that, Ji Yunan confirmed that this world was indeed related to the game in his previous life. Not only did the power systems correspond, but even the gods in the game would appear directly. But for a long time, there had been no trace of the gods, until today. Different from a low-level god like the blood god, the god of flowers was a level 10 super god, only one step away from the main god level. The god's messengers were not that simple. Ji Yunan pretended not to know the two and sat calmly in his seat, but he had a panoramic view of what was going on. As the head of the family, Lu Yiming would not intervene in the battle between the two branches of the Lu family. It was the same for the other side. It was a competition of connections and the level of training of the younger generation. Each side would send 5 people to compete in 5 rounds. It was a best-of-5 system. Shu Yuanjun and Lu Yiming were good friends. Shu Yuanjuan's spatial ability was also very special, so it was natural that he would participate in this battle. As for the god of flowers, it was most likely an unexpected variable. Originally, Lu Li would definitely appear in such a situation. But this time, Lu Yiming did not let him participate. The reason was that he did not want him to meet Ji Yunan face to face. On the other hand, it was because there were enough people now. This time, Lu Yiming invited them to confirm the time of the competition with them in person. He also wanted to thank them for their help. Ji Yunan did not feel anything about it. He only came to help because of the deal with Land Marigold. After they left one after another, Ji Yunan deliberately slowed down and returned. He found Lu Yiming and asked, "Elder Lu, Who are those two people? Lu Yiming knew that he was asking about the Lan siblings. After all, those two people were indeed a bit mysterious. I don't know their specific background. A junior in the family accidentally saved them, so they agreed to help. How's his strength? Upon hearing this question, Lu Yiming replied with a serious expression, they are at least at the subtlety realm. That Lan Ta might already be at the eternal domain realm. Ji Yunan rubbed his chin. It was just as he thought. These were 2 third-rank divine envoys, but what was their purpose for coming here? On top of that, for 2 people with such strength to be saved by a junior from the Lu family. If it wasn't intentional, it must have been due to some other reason that they had temporarily lost their strength. Serious injury? Seal. Lacking divine power when he first came to this world. Lu Yiming didn't know that Ji Yunan had so many thoughts running through his mind in an instant. He only smiled and said, no matter where those 2 are from, they are still related to my Lu family. Mr. Ji Yu, you can rest assured. Ji Yunan nodded with a faint smile, and then casually found an excuse before bidding his farewell and leaving. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't curious about the divine envoys, but he wasn't in a hurry to approach them. After all, his own strength was fundamental. He wasn't worried about being discovered as an evil god. Evil gods were a very special kind of existence. Apart from the strangeness of the core god nation after the first class change, they were usually no different from ordinary people. Even the gods themselves couldn't tell. At the same time, the siblings Lan Ta and Lan Sai were talking in their room. Brother, the people here are so weak. Even third-rank cultivators are rare. Lan Sai sat on the bed, kicked off the high heels she was wearing, and giggled. Lan Ta was still expressionless. Don't underestimate them. This is just one of the worlds in the heavens, but there are 4th-rank and 5th-rank experts here. Remember to hide our identities. I know. Lan Sai curled her lips, obviously still somewhat dissatisfied. She muttered, the heavens are so chaotic, who would have the time to care about us, just in case. Lan Ta glared at her. After the matter with the Lu family is settled, we'll repay little Lu for saving our lives, then we'll set off to find the Clearwater Stone. Another few days passed, and Lin Yunyan's cultivation was steadily improving. She was already close to innate level 5, and the day of the competition with the Lu family had finally arrived. Under the guidance of the Lu family, Ji Yunan arrived at a small hidden arena. The rest of the people were already waiting. 2 sides stood with a clear distinction. One side was naturally led by Lu Yiming and Lu family, while the other side was led by a middle-aged woman. I didn't expect you to be leading the team this year, little 7. Lu Yiming was obviously a little surprised. He had never seen the people on that side before. That old woman Lu Fang really can't walk anymore? The middle-aged woman called Little 7 replied in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, Mother is in the central galaxy, so she couldn't come at the last minute. Please forgive her, 9th uncle. Both the question and the answer were a little showy. One was showing off, and the other was showing off, so it was Lu Yiming who was at a disadvantage. However, Lu Yiming was thick-skinned, so he didn't mind. He said casually, then let's begin. We'll follow the rules from last year. After saying that, he turned around and said, Old Shu, you're going first? Sure. Shu Yuanjun didn't say much and agreed right away. Before the battle, neither side knew who the other side would send out, so they took turns to send out their opponents. Ji Yunan stood in the crowd and glanced at the people on that side. Land Marigold stood beside him and said in a low voice, they know you're in 66 Amaterasu, so the old man will definitely send you out later. There's someone on the other side who's very suitable to be your opponent. Oh. Ji Yunan was a little curious. He wasn't familiar with the elites in the astral realm, so it was always good to know his opponent in advance. Do you see that big guy? Land Marigold pointed to the other side and said, he's a famous stars ranking expert. His title is the Storm Saber Wielder, Feng Shuotong. Ji Yunan rubbed his chin and didn't say anything. He just stared at the other side. He had already put on the observer's eyepiece and was carefully analyzing every flaw of his opponent. He actually understood why this Feng Shuotong was suitable to be his opponent. After the battle with Yi Qinglan, Everyone knew that his defense and recovery abilities were outstanding, and he had the ability to resist domain attacks. Hence, he wasn't afraid of an opponent who relied on frequent attacks to win. If Yi Qinglan was able to gather his 39,000 swords, Ji Yunan probably wouldn't dare to take it head-on. After knowing the possible opponents, Ji Yunan decided to withdraw his gaze. Anyway, the others didn't matter to him. But right at this moment, he noticed an unexpected person in the crowd of Lu's family. It was a woman who contributed a dungeon challenge to him a long time ago, giving him a bunch of points and sin points. Qin Xuanji. Back when Ji Yunan ascended to the astral realm and was on the starship, he met her and even activated the dungeon challenge. Later on, they were kidnapped to the Ming Lu, and the two of them made a deal. Ji Yunan helped her escape from the Ming Lu, and she taught Ji Yunan the method to become a solitary reincarnator. Chapter 82. The battle between the two branches of the Lu family was not as tense as one would imagine. After all, this happened every few years. With both sides winning and losing, both sides appeared calm. The first expert sent out was a warrior who used a short knife. He was only in the nuance realm, so it was obvious that they were counting on winning from the start. Xu Yuanjun was not famous, but he had participated in the battle between the two families in the past. The middle-aged woman knew what he was capable of, so she decided to give him a free fight. Sure enough, the warrior could not even touch the corner of Xu Yuanjun's clothes. The old man casually slapped him on the shoulder and he decisively surrendered. For the second round, the middle-aged woman sent out Qin Xuanji. She wore a strange red dress that looked like a long windbreaker, but the style was very strange. At this time, Qin Xuanji had reached the transcendent level. Her speed was not as fast as Ji Yunan's, but it was already very fast among normal cultivators. On the other side, Lu Yiming sent out the younger sister of the Lan siblings, Lan Sai. Lan Sai skipped over and pursed her lips into a smile. "Sister, you have to be careful. I won't be lenient." Qin Xuanji was clearly not the kind of person to waste words. She said directly, "Let's begin." Lan Sai's mouth flattened, and he casually pointed a finger, and a strange blue light directly collided in front of him. Qin Xuanji cautiously tried to avoid it, but the blue light seemed to have eyes of its own. It made a turn and stuck to her, colliding with her arm. It was only when the blue light touched her that Qin Xuanji realized what it was. It was actually water. The energy-formed water column, in a strange way, formed this kind of attack. Its own impact and high-energy state were not weak. It was just that it would turn into water after the attack. Most of the people watching from below frowned, puzzled by Lan Sai's move. Water was water, and energy was energy. How could they be converted? Could it be that this person's supernatural power was special? Only Ji Yunan had expected this. Despite the artistic name of the god of flowers, she was essentially a water god. In her early years, she had been a subordinate god of an ancient water god. Later on, she walked a new path on her own. As an experienced player, Ji Yunan was well aware of the abilities of the Blossom Oracle. This skill was known as high-pressure water gun or shoot your face by the players. It was the basic ability of the Blossom Oracle. In other words, it was a normal slash. The strength of this move was not high, but if one underestimated it because of this, one would suffer greatly. Qin Xuanji felt that the water gun didn't have much power, so she simply didn't dodge the subsequent water gun shots. She took them head-on and rushed in front of Lan Sai. She was an expert in close combat, and Lan Sai clearly wasn't that type of player. Everyone frowned at the situation. Lu Li, who had come to watch the battle but had no chance to go on stage, curled his lips and said, "What the hell? Why don't you let me go up?" Hearing this, Ji Yunan turned his head and gave him a weird smile. In Lu Li's eyes, his expression was one of disdain. Lu Li was about to say something when Lan Sai put on a bright smile and suddenly shouted, "Explode!" There seemed to be some invisible ripples sweeping across the field in an instant, and something on Qin Xuanji seemed to be detonated. Bang! 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 A series of explosions rang out. The water stains all over Qin Xuanji's body instantly became the most lethal weapon, directly exploding on the surface of her body. The power of each explosion was not big, but these explosions were mixed in the water stains. How many bombs were on Qin Xuanji? Lan Sai probably didn't know the answer herself. She only knew that this blow alone was enough to make the opponent lose the ability to fight. Countless flowers of blood burst out from Qin Xuanji's body. The blood and the girl's pale face made her look beautiful and coquettish, revealing a strange sense of beauty. Ji Yunan's eyes narrowed slightly, and he whispered with a kind of nostalgia, "Flowers." This was the signature picture of the Oracle of Flowers taking action, which was the real meaning of the word flowers. Unfortunately, although the god of flowers had a nice name, she belonged to the Dark Pantheon, and she mostly used such bloody means. In the blink of an eye, Qin Xuanji was covered with blood. She was about to be defeated, but the next moment, the situation changed again. Just as Lan Sai revealed a victorious smile on her face and her mind began to relax, her opponent suddenly changed. From a person, he turned into a giant snake. The giant snake with scarlet scales all over its body bit down on Lan Sai, its monstrous mouth almost covering the entire sky. Ji Yunan had seen this scene before, but at that time, Qin Xuanji could only transform into a head at the innate level, but now she had transformed her whole body. "Bloodline carrier," Lu Li instantly exclaimed. The same exclamations continued to ring out, even behind the middle-aged woman. It was clear that not everyone among them knew Qin Xuanji's identity. Lan Sai's face instantly turned pale. She was not good at fighting, so she couldn't react for a moment. Lan Ta's figure appeared in front of her at the crucial moment. He raised a shield made of blue mist and blocked Qin Xuanji's mouth with brute force. Seeing this, Lu Yiming didn't wait for Lan Ta to speak and said, "We lost this round." Lan Ta helped his sister off the stage, still in shock, and nodded at Lu Yiming. "Thank you. I'll take over the next round." On the other side, Qin Xuanji had also returned to her human form, and she was still wearing that strange red dress. Only now did everyone realize that the dress was probably formed from her scales. After Qin Xuanji left the stage, Lu Qi arranged for someone to treat her wounds. When she arrived at the back of the stage, an angry voice immediately shouted, "Xuanji, who beat you up like this?" A young man was walking over quickly. Seeing Qin Xuanji's mangled body, he couldn't restrain his anger and asked. Qin Xuanji's expression didn't even change. She shook her head and said, "I'm fine." Actually, she was really fine. Her wounds looked terrible, but they were all superficial. With her physique as a bloodline carrier, even if she didn't move, she would automatically recover in a few days. However, the young man suddenly stomped his foot. "Aunt Lu really let you go? How could she? Tell me who did this, I want my father to beat him to death." Qin Xuanji was already used to this scene, so she simply shut her mouth and applied the ointment on herself. Her physique was not like that of a normal person. As long as she treated her wounds properly, her scales could be strengthened instead. Seeing this, the young man could only angrily walk out of the back of the stage and toward the stage. Someone at the door quickly stopped him and smiled apologetically. "Young Master Feng has instructed that you can't go over there, *T. Young Master Feng pushed the man away. "Xuanji was beaten up like this. If I didn't come here, were you going to keep hiding it from me?" The man didn't dare to get involved in the conflict between these important people, so he could only smile apologetically. Chapter 83. By the time young Master Feng arrived at the arena, the third battle was nearing its end. Lan Ta's opponent was a skinny man. He wasn't famous, but he was extremely powerful. He wasn't any weaker than Yi Qinglan. He was one of Lu Qi's trump cards. This kind of unknown great expert was the real trump card. No one knew where she found such a person. However, Lu Qi had miscalculated this time. Lan Ta's methods were more unpredictable than his sister's, and his battle awareness was more mature. His tactics were commendable even in the eyes of an expert like Ji Yunan. The battle had been going according to Lan Ta's rhythm from the beginning. He first attacked with the same blue water pillar to force his opponent to move. When his opponent finally dodged the water pillar and arrived in front of him, Lan Ta showed his trump card. 6 beams of blue light shot out. The skinny man was shot in the face. After the blossoming flower mark was placed on him, he could only be suppressed all the way. It was clear that he was going to lose. Feng Zhuotang's expression was solemn as he watched. He was well aware of the skinny man's strength. They were going to win this battle, but they didn't expect his opponent to find strong reinforcements. In this way, the pressure on him would be even greater. At that moment, he saw a young man walking over angrily. It was his only son, Feng Lun. Lun, what are you doing here? Feng Zhuotang frowned and his expression darkened. Didn't I tell you to stay in the backfield? Feng Lun, who had been furious, restrained himself after his father reprimanded him. He said angrily, Dad, Xuanji is so badly injured. Feng Zhuotang glared at him. What does her condition have to do with you? Don't harass her in the future. Do you think I don't know what's going on? Feng Zhuotang was already displeased with his son's pursuit of Qin Xuanji, a woman of unknown origin. Now that he found out that Qin Xuanji was a bloodline carrier, he couldn't let his son provoke her anymore. Why? Feng Lun almost exploded on the spot. He looked at his father, dumbfounded. Feng Zhuotang's face darkened. Just as he was about to reprimand him, someone beside him said in a low voice, Master Feng, Madame Lu invites you over. Feng Zhuotang was slightly taken aback when he heard this and immediately turned to look at the stage. Indeed, the victor had been decided. Lu Qi nodded slightly at him, indicating that it was time for him to act. Thus, this swordsman with the title of Gale and Sudden Storm did not bother to teach his son a lesson and immediately walked onto the stage. On the other side, as expected, Lu Yiming turned to Ji Yunan and said, Mr. Ji Yu, please lend us a hand in this battle. All right. Ji Yunan nodded lightly and stepped onto the stage. Ji Yunan was quite famous on this side, but obviously, it hadn't spread to the 6-star region yet. Most people on Lu 7's side didn't recognize this young man. Only Lu Qi himself and a few other contestants had serious expressions on their faces. Feng Lun was still sulking at the side when he heard a surprised and cold voice. Ji Yunan. Hearing this familiar voice, Feng Lun quickly turned to look. Qin Xuanji had already returned to his side. She had just applied the ointment on herself and was covered in wounds, but her face was full of surprise. Xuanji, you know him? Feng Lun pointed at Ji Yunan, who had his hand raised. He had a doubtful expression and an indescribable jealousy. In his impression, Qin Xuanji had never changed her expression because of anyone. She always had that calm and composed expression, and it was this calmness that fascinated him the most. Even in the 6-star region, there weren't many people who would constantly pay attention to the stars ranking. After all, those people were too far away from them. Hence, the two of them obviously didn't know much about Ji Yunan's recent achievements. But Qin Xuanji still nodded heavily. He is very strong. Feng Lun showed some dissatisfaction and asked, Is this person stronger than my father? Qin Xuanji seemed to ponder seriously before replying, It's hard to say. He was just a Xiantian a few months ago. If Lord Feng is careful, you won't be afraid of him. A few months ago, he was still a Xiantian. Feng Lun nearly laughed out and said with disdain, How can a newly advanced transcendent be a match for my father? Qin Xuanji didn't say anything. She would never argue with others. She had been like this since the first time Ji Yunan met her. Feng Lun knew her personality and didn't wait for her to speak before speaking. Xuanji, just watch. My father will definitely send that guy off the stage in a few slashes. Qin Xuanji was still looking at the stage in silence with a grave expression. She felt that she had improved a lot during this period of time and had basically reached her expectations. She wondered what level Ji Yunan was at. Her expression made Feng Lun feel even more sullen. He simply shouted at the stage, Father, beat that guy to death. He was just a Xiantian a few months ago. Feng Lun's voice wasn't soft and everyone around him heard him clearly. Instantly, there were a few sneers and some discussions. Finding a newly advanced transcendent to fight? Looks like this match is a gift from the opponent. There's no other way. It's not easy to invite a true expert. Using some people to fight Lord Feng is also a strategy. That's true. Looks like the outcome will depend on the 5th match. Seeing that his words had an effect, Feng Lun revealed a pleased expression. He glanced at Qin Xuanji, but the latter was still expressionless. Feng Zhuotang, who was on the stage, also heard this and his expression instantly turned ugly. Of course, he knew Ji Yunan's background and hurriedly said, "Mr. Ji Yu, cut the crap. Let's fight." Ji Yunan was already holding the crimson saber in his hand, his expression cold. Feng Zhuotang sighed inwardly and could only shut his mouth and focus. The domain under his feet was already slowly expanding, and there seemed to be countless long sabers dancing within it. The saber light made him look like a god descending. He knew the process of the battle between Ji Yunan and Yi Qinglan, so he simply opened the domain first and didn't give Ji Yunan a chance to make the first move. Seeing this, Feng Lun was even more pleased. He pointed at the stage and said, "Xuanji, do you see that? That is the domain of an eternal domain cultivator. I'm afraid that Ji Yunan can't even enter the domain." Halfway through his words, he suddenly couldn't continue. Even the laughter stopped abruptly. This was because the instant Feng Zhuotang took out his saber, Ji Yunan's figure suddenly disappeared and immediately appeared above Feng Zhuotang's head, directly slashing down with his saber. Above his head, Feng Zhuotang's reaction was extremely fast. He instantly extracted thousands of saber intents and poured them into his long saber. He used his saber to meet Ji Yunan's slash, while the other saber lights swept towards the enemy. Previously, when Ji Yunan killed Yi Qinglan, many people already knew about his methods, so Feng Zhuotang was already prepared this time. With the support of thousands of saber intents, the long saber finally managed to block the Bloody King's blade and didn't get cut in half. The other saber lights also hit Ji Yunan's body, instantly turning him into a bloody mess. Seeing this, Feng Lun heaved a sigh of relief. However, before he could say anything, he saw that Ji Yunan was forced to take a step back and simply stood there motionlessly. Feng Zhuotang smiled bitterly. "Everyone thinks that Your Excellency defeated Yi Qinglan by relying on a divine weapon, but I didn't expect Your Excellency's control of the domain to be so superb." He knew very well what had just happened when he used the power of his domain to block Ji Yunan's saber. Ji Yunan's domain had actually turned into countless silk threads and penetrated his remaining domain. His saber domain had been forcefully broken, and there was now a shadow under his feet. "I lost this battle," Feng Zhuotang said sincerely. "Thank you, Mr. Ji Yu, for showing mercy." In his opinion, since the other party had stopped after one slash, he had naturally shown mercy. Otherwise, he would have been seriously injured even if he didn't die after another slash. Ji Yunan looked down at his body. After waiting for 3 seconds, the praise of dawn had already taken effect, and his injuries were rapidly recovering. As an expert player, he would try not to get injured if he could. This was a kind of obsessive-compulsive disorder.